I'd like to call to order the Weathersfield School Board meeting for Tuesday, June 8th at 6 p.m. or 6:05 p.m. We have a special guest with us today. State Rep John Arison is here, and he'll be speaking a little later. I guess first things first, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which is the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, you know what I'm going to need someone to do, David, is to keep an eye on hands raised for me, because I can't see that from here.
I think I have everybody.
And also if anybody types anything in the chat. So the first thing we have, if there are any changes or additions to the agenda, and actually I have a couple. For the public participation announcements, we're going to be doing the Mario Babaku Scholarship Award, and also Wendy will be speaking for the parent-teacher organization. In the principal's report, the recovery plan and the summer academy are going to be moved into items for discussion directly after the legislative report. Does anyone else have any changes or additions? None?
I think we're good, no?
Okay. All right, so we have the approval of the minutes from last month, and I just want to first off say you did an excellent job, Becky. That was a crazy meeting last time with a lot of people speaking and everything, and great minutes from the meeting. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
They were beautiful minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I read them over, and I don't have any changes. If anybody else wants to make a motion to approve.
There's a spelling error, but that's okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 11, 2021.
Yes, speak up.
Oh, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 11, 2021.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So the minutes are approved. Unanimous. Okay, and then next we have public participation and announcements. Do we want to wait for the Mario Babaku?
Yes,
Okay.
we're anticipating the recipient to be here at 6:15.
Oh, okay. All right. So when they get here, we'll do it. Is Wendy available?
She's not on.
Okay. Well, I guess those two things left to move to later in the meeting. So next, are there any other public participation not already on the agenda? Just raise your hand if you have anything. Okay. Not hearing any. I will move on to the principal's report.
Thank you. I could think. I took my camera off. Don't like what I see, but there it is. Can everyone hear me? My mic is off, but my camera's on. Can folks hear me?
Let's see if somebody types in the chat.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So I want to start off by really thanking Brian Woodbury and Jim Taft and the custodial crew who've been remarkable in getting us ready for graduation, which by the way was at 4 o'clock today with no rain. We moved it inside. It was highly successful. And they were just fastidious about measuring to make sure we were 3 feet apart and that we had 2 hand washing stations and there were flowers on the stage. And that really took a lot of work. Our custodians in the last couple of weeks have just worked overtime. And I just want to thank them for keeping our school so pristine and working so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to mention that we have an incredible library media specialist teacher by the name of Tara Smith. And she hosted a book fair I want to say 2 weeks ago, and they raised over $3,000 for books for the library. She has always been industrious in that way. If you look at our library budget over the last couple of years, at least in my tenure, which would be 11, you'll see every time we cut the budget, that library takes a hit. And literally, some years, she's only had a $2,000 budget. She never complains. She just makes it up by hosting book fairs. And when she hosts a book fair, she comes in on her day off to count money, to get it set up. She puts an inordinate amount of time to make sure that that happens and that kids have the opportunity to buy books. Right now, she's got a book sale going. We have a lot of old books we need to get rid of. You know, the copyrights are, 1970. We've got a few early 80s. And so you'll see a jar of coins over there. I'm a great coin saver. So I went into kindergarten this weekend. If they could count 10 pennies, then they could go to the book fair and get a soft-covered book for 10 cents. By the time I got to first grade, they had to count 25. They counted nickels and pennies, and they were amazing. And then they got a hardcover book. So then I think Lori Small's second grade went in yesterday, and I just gave a bunch of quarters and dimes, and they got to buy. So we are encouraging kids to bring money, but if they don't have money, that's not important. On Friday, the last day of the book fair, everybody gets to go in and take what they want. And that's a good way of getting rid of some old books and putting books in the hands of families, which I think is great. Special thanks to Tara Smith. That takes a lot of energy and a lot of planning, and she does it with love. She's wonderful.
She's on too.
Is she on?
Yeah.
Tara, thank you, Tara. I see that we have the Mario Babaku recipient here. Is your mom coming, Kate?
No.
Well,
Oh,
I think we can segue right into that since that's on
Do you want
my
to have her come
report.
and stand here?
Stand here, please.
Yes. Wonderful. Can you pick that? Thank you so much.
You going out?
Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
You can stay right
I think I can stay. No, you face the camera. You and I already hugged today. I don't care. I'm going to admit that on camera. We hugged and we took pictures this morning because every year we report it in the town reports. And as you know, Kate has been here since kindergarten, so we had a lot of years together. I want to mention that the year that Mario died, which was 11 years ago, I believe last week, they started this award, and her sister won the first one, Courtney
Wow.
won the first one. And
That's
here
sweet.
is Kelly Murphy's baby doing it again. That's beautiful. Isn't that a beautiful, wonderful thing? So now, before I start crying, because I'm done crying, I said I'm done. So today we are presenting the Mario Babaku Scholarship Award for 2021. Mario was principal at the Wethersfield School for 20 years. He was dedicated to the belief that every single child deserved a well-rounded education. He served as a positive role model for both students and staff through his passion, good humor, and generous spirit. Each year, a Wethersfield High School senior who exhibits these same qualities could be chosen to receive this $500 scholarship. Scholarship funds may be used for tuition, room and board, or books, and will be dispersed at the beginning of the second semester of college. It is with great pleasure that we congratulate Kate Murphy for winning this award. Kate will be attending the University of Vermont. Her major will be Parks and Rec and Tourism Management, with the dream of becoming an adventure guide. Congratulations from the Wethersfield School, the Wethersfield community, and everyone here at this meeting this evening. To you, Kate Murphy. She already has this, but we had it back on.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I'm so proud of you.
Great job.
Thank you.
That was easy,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good luck.
Stay in touch.
So wow, to see her
That was
all
great.
grown up.
I know.
I haven't seen her in years.
Believe it.
The baby.
Yeah.
So the next update.
Oh, that's probably me joining.
That's okay.
Oh,
I want to make sure Jessica's here.
As long as you turn your volume off, you should be good.
it is. on.
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Your volume.
Your sound volume.
Oh. I just had to go on to see the people because I couldn't see them from there.
Yeah.
Now you
So I see Jessica Kishko is here. She's going to be talking about two things, maybe more, two things that I know about, and that would be the survey that she recently conducted with a team of folks. And last night was white paw print night, and she can tell you a little bit about that too. Jessica.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So, David, I'm going to share my screen because I want to share some pictures. I hope you guys can see them there, but let's see. I'm not used to Google Meet. Can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, great. So just a couple pictures to show you how last night went. It was amazing. And if you drove by and could see the shed, you could kind of see it on your way. Just a couple pictures of our hands being put on there. It was really fun. Kristen even put her handprint up, and Anne Marie did, which was really, really exciting. And then a couple coaches put together a kickball game with all the kids that were there, which was really fun. We were able to give out our certificates. We were able to give out snacks and drinks. We were able to give out some free t-shirts and hats that we had in storage that were just taking up a bunch of space. So that was really great to be able to give those out. We painted some new benches, which I don't know, some of you may have saw on Facebook. Alicia Crane and her husband were amazing and created some new benches for us so that we have those for soccer season and softball and baseball. And we were able to share some information about when signups usually are, how our season usually works, what sports are offered. So it was truly a wonderful night, and I really appreciate all the community support. And it was wonderful. It was really great to see, and it was great to be with a lot of people, which we haven't been with in a while. Next is the survey results for the rising 7th and 8th graders. We have the numbers for all three schools, which I thought was going to be interesting to share. As you can see, it looks like we'll be able to host a girls soccer program for that 7th and 8th grade team. Our boys numbers are a little bit low, but it's really interesting to see that we do have some interest in flag football and bass fishing. And so I think that if we can make that work, it would be awesome to have those kids participate in some other sports that aren't offered at Wethersfield. And some ideas for the future. I would like to, with the school board's approval, to have signups for our fall sports begin early August. Keep them open for a few weeks, much earlier than we normally do, and to see kind of what our numbers are then. We will be able to hopefully make a decision and have the school board help us make a decision about the teams by August 27th, which is, I believe that's 2 full weeks before school starts, or a week before school starts. And then area rec centers usually make the same decisions and kind of close their registrations by that time as well. So we would be able to offer other kids to go to other programs if we don't have enough teams. And then similar to what we did with the Panther Paw Pride Night, I would like to do a fall sports night. Very similar, with a pickup game of soccer, some snacks, some drinks, and then have some registration information at that time. Hopefully like the middle of August, so we would do it before our signups are officially over. So that's kind of my plan, my idea, and I welcome really anybody.
I think that sounds great. And I don't know about everybody else, but if everybody's available around the 27th, just for a quick online meeting to make a decision, would that be okay with everybody? Okay, yeah, I think we can make that happen.
Is there anything she needs support-wise as far as mailing lists or anything from our school that we can help?
All I'll need is a little bit of help from BJ sending a couple mass emails out in the beginning of the month. Mass emails, I'm going to put it on our Facebook page, and then all of our previous people who registered and that are in our sports engine program, I can mass email all of them. So we'll probably get hit a few times with a few multiple emails, but more information is better than none.
Good, thank you.
Is there a hand up?
Is there a hand up? Who?
Ethan McNaught.
Ethan McNaughton?
Sorry, trying to fight with my mute. One suggestion I have, I mean, we've already started my signups for my winter season for hockey. I'd really suggest we start it now. There's no reason to wait. And of course, you wouldn't close it. You can always keep going, because a lot of schools, you start the sports 2 weeks before the school year starts. So we're already going to be missing out if we don't have that. Plus, you can't line up coaches and things until you know, like, hey, you're going to have a team. Okay, that person, we've got a parent that's willing to coach. We've got a teacher that's willing to coach, all that kind of stuff. So I'd suggest we go ahead and do our signups now, keep supplementing it in the fall, and do reminders, and people can always join as you go. But I think you're going to put yourself in a tight squeeze, and there's going to be a lot going on with people figuring stuff out, you know, right during that time is a really busy time coming back to school. So no reason to wait. And the sooner we can tell people, you know, the plan, and we're going to have, for example, if you're thinking about doing bass fishing or something totally new, be nice so people can start putting that kind of a thing together, so they know, like, whoever's going to run it knows in the summer, so they can start planning for that, rather than trying to squeeze it together within a week of when they find out that they're doing it. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, that's great. In my experience, Ethan, is that the longer you have things open, the more people usually wait till the last minute. Oh, I'll do it later. Oh, I'll do it later. And
True.
I'm speaking as a kid of a mom who waited. Oh, it's open forever, so we'll just do it later. That's why I don't want to open it in this school year, this year. I want to give people the entire month of July to just relax and not think about sports, not think about school, not think about anything. And then we'll open it up in August, ready to begin again. And bass fishing and flag football are offered at Windsor. So that information will be coming out, but that's something that, like we've had before, multiple students have played it at area schools. So we will offer that, but it will be run through the Windsor program, not ours.
Anyone else have anything to say?
Chelsea Chase is writing in the chat. I can read that if you'd like.
Yes, please.
You got it.
I would have to agree with Ethan, and the more information that can be given to families at the earliest time would be really helpful, as our kids do more than one activity. Chelsea also asked, would there be a pre-season?
Yeah, preseason for middle school doesn't start until school starts. We don't do any preschool preseason for this age group. So once school starts and once things get going on September 7th, we will likely begin our preseason then.
I think Ethan raised his hand again.
Would there be any chance of sending out the information in July?
Sure, I can easily do that. Yep, I can open up the registrations in July. It's just
You don't have to open up the registrations early, but just to get the information out to people, just so they can start planning about what they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Chelsea Chase has her hand raised. And
Chelsea?
Does Ethan have his hand raised again?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I was just thinking, especially for our middle schoolers who do more than one activity, information that would be helpful might be things like when practices would be held, which I know can be, a tricky thing to nail down early on. But I know at least for our family, the ability to be on a team sometimes really comes down to what's the time commitment and when, can we make it logistically happen? So you might see more kids sign up, the more information that's put out and the earlier that it's there.
Yeah, I'll try to work on that. What we would need is coaches and coaches' contracts, and that would all have to be done like now for that to happen. So that's my only hesitation on actually setting times, and that's why I'd like to set times once we know a little bit more with the numbers. So we would open the registrations in early August to hopefully have a number kind of set by mid-August, and then we can get times rolling.
Is it possible for students to sign up like after, like, I know registrations close August 27th, but say somebody needs to wait and see what day practices are going to be? Could they sign up after the practices?
I would say I would like to move away from that. I would like to have a drop dead date, so that way kids can know if we don't have a team by August 27th, they can go play elsewhere. So there's no hesitation. There's no, oh, we maybe will have more numbers, maybe some more kids will sign up. So I would like that August 27th to be a drop dead date. And that date's very flexible. It was just something I pulled up the calendar and kind of looked at. We could easily do it the week ahead of time so that the registration's not open as long. So I don't have a problem doing that as well.
Okay. Does anyone else have a hand up?
I see Ethan's, I don't know if
Ethan?
that's an old hand or.
Ethan, is that an old hand or is that your hand?
No, it's new. So what we've done in a few years back is at the end of your ending season, we would do the sign-ups, have them available right then, so you can grab those the parents. In fact, at the end of, and I know COVID, everything's a little different, but at the end of the season event, the parents could actually sign themselves up for the next one coming up, because what I find is that if they have it in their hands and they can just sign it right then, half your battle is getting the parent to just get the information back in. It's not whether the kid wants to do it or not. It's just their parents getting the information in. So my fear is if you wait until August, you actually aren't going to have any in-person time where these parents are there to see stuff other than electronic communications and stuff. You're not going to get a chance to have any, to put stuff in your notice and the kids get it in their backpack and then fill it up. You're going to completely rely on electronics. That's not numbers are going to be lower if we do that, because you're going to miss out on the parents that either overlook their emails, don't have good email access, all that kind of stuff. The other part of it is, like she said, there's a lot of things that have to go together with getting your coaches and all that lined up. And I know from experience that takes time. And if you don't have your registrations in, you don't know if you have enough for a team. You don't know which parents are their kids when you see them and you're like, okay, that person's willing to coach or has before to start doing all those things. You can't start any of that until you start registration. So I would strongly suggest that you do put it out in the kids' backpacks, give it to them before the end of this year so they can fill it out or sign up online, whatever. So you have a chance to get something physical in their hands before that season, before you start to the next season. The other thing that troubled me is you made mention that Windsor has flag football. Lots of schools around have flag football, and traditionally kids have done lots of places. Why would we limit our kids to just being able to do it at Windsor?
We're not limiting that, Ethan.
Okay, good. All right.
They're having it, but we're not.
Just a survey to gauge interest.
Yeah, we're not.
I just want to make sure because last time we got locked in.
No, actually, that was a kind of a misconception. If we don't offer something at Weathersfield, people can go to whatever other school they want to. They don't have to go to Windsor.
Well, except we got direct email from our AD when we asked the question last time of, are we allowed to? And the answer was no, you have to participate at the Heartland baseball, the Weathersfield softball, or the track in Windsor, or you can't participate. That was specifically asked and answered, and I think it's a VBA rule.
That was just due to COVID, I'm being told. So that won't be the case next year.
Awesome. Okay, great.
Yeah, and Ethan, all of our registrations are all online, so there's actually no paper registrations anymore. So I could easily send BJ something to send out in kids' backpacks to say that this is our website, please visit it, and that's when signups will be. And I can open registrations. I just don't think we'll have 1 or 2 kids register right now, and then the big majority will be in August when kids are starting to think about going back to school. But it's something that I can definitely do.
I agree, but there are the parents that don't have good internet access or computer access, they've got to be able to sign up, and we want to get those people. And a lot of times those parents start signing up when they see kids on the field, which is unfortunate. The other piece that you mentioned too is talking about having a hard, fast deadline. Totally agree with where you're going with that. And I think having a hard, fast deadline of deciding if you're going to have a team or not totally makes sense. And I think it probably wasn't what was intended to be communicated, but I do think in the instances where you do end up having a team, you should let people join later. You shouldn't shut that off. But I agree, you got to be able to.
Yep, it's the hard deadline for when we don't have enough to have a team.
And I would suggest to the school board, this came up before, I would strongly suggest that the school board have the policy enforce it strongly. If a student does not sign up for, let's say, for example, soccer at Wethersfield, if they do not sign up for soccer at Wethersfield, then they are not eligible to sign up at any other school if Wethersfield doesn't have a team. So you don't have the kids that are intentionally ducking to play at a different school. And I know there's an issue on 5th, 6th versus whatever. At least you can enforce it at 7th and 8th. You may be able to enforce it at the younger levels, at least for things like cross country, where it actually goes 5th through 8th. But I think you guys should have a policy and do that.
We need to start moving on though.
Well, hang on. But I'd like you guys to at least discuss that and decide if it's not something you're interested in. That's okay.
No, but
at least...
I want to get the opinions of some members of the board on this topic. But I think you've had enough time to speak right now. I'm going to have to cut you off here just for a little bit, okay? Give somebody else a chance to speak.
I'll give my opinion on it. I don't think there's any harm in opening it right now, only because I know a lot of our parents' brains are still in school mode. So I probably would sign up now just because once I'm in summer mode, I'm not thinking about school. So I agree with, and then having like, if I want to think about coaching or my husband wants to think about coaching, then we can plan that out before August. So I don't see the harm in opening it, but that's just my thought. I mean, if it stays open until August.
Does anyone else on the board have an opinion?
I think it's great if you open it up. Why not?
Right.
That'd be the main, just why not? But I also wanted to ask Jessica, what does your coaching staff look like right now? Are you having trouble getting coaches? Do you think that you have enough?
Yeah, we have,
like, or should parents start really, if we're going to ask this of the school, we're also going to ask for the volunteer coaches to step up early as well.
I don't think we will have a problem. No.
Okay, great.
But I can open it up. The hard part is that I have to create the registration. So I will try to do that as soon as I can.
Okay. And are you able to give something to BJ to put in the backpacks? And also, if parents don't have internet access, is there another way to sign your kids up? I mean,
there's not another way. There's free internet at the school, and I know that nobody has had a problem thus far. And if anybody does, they can call me. For almost 2 years now, we've been solely registration online.
Okay. So we're going to open up the registration as soon as possible, and I guess it might be good to maybe make the decision at our August meeting. We could even have our meeting a little later in August than usual, and decide at that meeting if we're going to have our own teams or open it up for kids to go elsewhere.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say?
I don't know if that's an old thing, but Ethan still has his hand up.
And you had something in the chat from Laura Powers. Jessica, just one more option. The high school bowling program has been hoping to get information out to the middle school students of other schools in our district in order to improve their JV numbers. This is a winter sports program.
It's a winter sport.
Okay, so that's something to think about for winter then.
That's winter.
Great, thank you. Ethan, do you have something else to add?
Chelsea has his hand.
Oh, sorry, Chelsea.
Both of them.
Yeah, I just started typing in the chat. I just wanted to quickly put out there that I think that there are some barriers for, I think especially our older students participating in sports when it comes to transportation. I remember just a couple of years ago, it was difficult, especially when practices would start close to, you know, the time that my student would be getting off the bus, but she wasn't allowed to stay at the school, even if there was only going to be like an hour, which I totally understand. I get it, but I just wonder if, you know, we could collectively put our heads together and think of some solutions to, you know, working on some of those barriers for kids.
Jean Marie's gonna.
Thanks. That is a very valid point, and that's been brought up in the past. So there is a new schedule for next year, and my understanding is that although we're boarding kids on the bus 2:15 to 2:25, that teachers and most paraprofessionals are paid to be here till 2:45, and in some cases 3:15. So we're working on getting the pause program up and running after school, so kids would not be getting on the bus, but they would be supervised. And I predict that program will open at 2:45. And for kids who can't get in pause, and it costs money, and there's a student-teacher ratio that's required. They're under a different licensing bureau. There will also, we were given $10,000 out of ESSER funds to do homework support and tips. So I believe there will, Chelsea, be some supervision here in this building, and it might look like 3-4 different programs so that kids won't have to rush home and then rush back, which I think will be a godsend to parents.
Thank you. That will absolutely be helpful as long as those programs don't fill, you know, and the older students are allowed.
Chelsea, I just have a quick question. Is
Fill.
a
Yeah, fill up, they do.
is a 5:30 practice better? Because I know that for the past 2 years, most of our coaches have traditional jobs and work until 4 or 5 o'clock. So we haven't had practices really much earlier than that. So I know that for me, because I have another job as well, that 5 or 5:30 start time is helpful instead of a 4 p.m. start time. So I was just curious if you have any opinion on that.
I think our situation is a little different from other parents because my daughter is a gymnast, and so she spends a whole lot of time in the gym and in dance classes. So I would personally say earlier is better, you know, pending the transportation issue, but I think a lot of families might feel differently.
Thank you. Anyone else have their hand up right now?
Ethan, I don't know if it's a new
Okay.
hand.
Ethan, do you have something to add?
Yeah, if you are going to do a policy about signing up or you can't participate at other schools, it has to be in your notices out, or it's just a gotcha to people afterwards, and it doesn't have the intended effect. They have to have the notice for it to be fair. So I would encourage you, if you're not interested, I mean, you can just not discuss it and it dies, but if you're going to do that, you have to do it soon so the parents know that's going to be the case, and they have to sign up by the deadline or they can't participate at other schools if you want to encourage them to do it.
Okay, thank you for that information. I think it's something we'd like to think about a little longer. I'm not sure how I feel about that particular subject, so I need to think about it, and we can definitely talk about it at our next meeting.
One more thing under principal's report, if you want to say.
We have one more thing from Jean Marie under the
Yes.
principal's report.
On the agenda, you'll see the notation of 7th grade options, but we don't have to worry about options anymore. Not only is ESSER paying for a 3rd grade teacher, because that was extraordinarily large class for next year, 24, we now have 2. And Lori Small, who is our math interventionist, opted to move into 3rd grade. She had such fun teaching 2nd grade this year that she's actually going to root with some of her kids. So we now have a K4 math interventionist opening that is a locally funded position. We did have a few candidates. Sadly, they took other positions. So today I had it reposted on School Spring. So we will move forward with finding that applicant. The other ESSER fund position that is being funded is a 2nd middle level teacher. So we'll have 5 middle level teachers next year. And I think David is in a position to make a recommendation tonight, pending some licensure.
Yeah, right. Yeah, hopefully everybody can hear me. Yeah, the middle school team did some interviewing, and they have a candidate they presented to both Gene and myself, and well known to the community, Zach O'Brien, who was a graduate of Wethersfield. He was also a graduate of Windsor. Really nice kid and very talented. I think he was the salutatorian at Windsor. I remember him giving a speech, and I think it was really close between the valedictorian and the salutatorian. So I think he'll be great. There are a couple of license issues, but I think we can work through those. He's graduating from Johnson. Well, what was formerly Johnson State, now I think it's North. What do they call it now? There's a new name for it, but anyhow, which is a teacher preparatory college. So I think he'll easily, have get a license, and I think he may even qualify for a middle level endorsement, which will give some real strength to that team. He's got a lot of courses in English, a lot of courses in social studies. He will have a 712 social studies license, but we also think we can get him an ELA middle level license, and he's also minored in art, so he'll be great with with project-based learning and all of those things. So I think the middle school team is pretty excited. I know Anne Marie had an opportunity to talk to a couple of the middle school teachers tonight. So I would recommend him, and I think the motion, I don't know if we're going to do it now or we'll do it
Under, because I have another
Okay, good.
recommendation.
So we'll do it under action, but then the motion would simply be, pending license to authorize the superintendent to offer Zachary O'Brien. But we'll do that when we get to it. But I think that was a good score, because I'll tell you, it's tough right now getting teachers. And I also love when you can keep a position local, and put money back into your own community. And Zach will be wonderful.
So initially, we were going to talk about the various options for 7th grade, and then, as luck would have it, we were given ESSER money to fully fund that middle-level teacher. We had talked at one time about not filling the position that was vacated by Callista Polidor. She was the paraprofessional that worked in 6th grade. She was going to loop with that class, but then was offered an SCI position in Windsor. So the position was open. We talked about not filling it, and then we decided, no, we've got the money in the budget. It's an important position. And so I'm pleased to recommend tonight, again, someone extraordinary who's local, whose children have come through this school, is Crystal Sorrell. She comes with 8 years of experience working in Bellows Falls. She worked in a life skills program for some special needs kids. She is halfway through completing her teacher endorsement program and in regular ed with a minor in special ed. She lives in the old Bow, I guess you'd say Route 5, and her children have been extraordinary kids in this school. She's graduated, I want to say 3 already, and she's got 3 more to go, or 2 more to go. 3 more to go, great.
Wow.
So Crystal comes with a wealth of experience and knowledge. She's excellent with kids, and I'm recommending, and again, that's an action item that will occur at the end of this meeting, but I am recommending her to fill that regular education paraprofessional position that is in the budget for FY22. And there are some other positions Angie Ledoux's working on. Angie has written a grant so that we would get a Title I, grade 5 through 8 ELA interventionist, and she's working on that hiring. And there was a 0.5 math interventionist for grades 5 through 8. That was ESSER funds, and I know they're fine-tuning that because they certainly gave us more money than we thought we were going to get initially. So that's, I think, is still in the works, but we'll hear more about that, I think, as
Probably in
school
July.
approaches. Yeah. And last but not least, I just want to do a shout out to Diana Stilson, who is the grade 8 advisor, who conducted this evening's graduation ceremony. That was wonderful. Parents and kids have just been incredible. This COVID pandemic year has been so stressful, and yet they've risen to the occasion. And I think you could see that tonight at graduation. So congratulations to our 8th grade graduates, all 26 of them and their families, and to Diana and team who helped put on that graduation tonight. Thank you.
Okay, up next we have the superintendent's report.
Right, so I'll be brief. I do want to take this opportunity. I'm sure all of us have the same thought, and we did at graduation tonight too, that this is really the last meeting, and I'm not going to say too much because Jean Marie will cry, then I'll start crying, and that's not good. But this is her last board meeting, and I do want to give her a big shout out on behalf of the central office and the supervisory union. We did present her with a little gift tonight, but I know the school has other things planned. We won't say what those are right now, but she is a and BJ's acting like she knows nothing. I know nothing. But anyhow, I've worked with lots of educators over my almost 40 years, and she is one of the most dedicated people that I know, and she always puts the school first, the kids first, the community first, and this is her life. And I realized that when I arrived, and I have really enjoyed the time working with her. And so anyhow, Jean, thank you so much for all you've given to the kids here. So I'll just give that shout out. And I don't have a whole lot to report on tonight, because usually what I do is a legislative piece, and I think, John, are you gonna give us a little bit of an overview tonight?
You might fill in the gaps, but yeah.
That's right. That's why John's here tonight. So I'm not gonna do that. I will tell you, and I don't know what was on your list originally, but Summer Academy and the recovery planning.
Yeah, we're gonna do that during items for discussion.
Okay, we'll do that during items for discussion. So that would have been two things on my list. And so the only thing I will also say is that it is one of the most enjoyable parts of my job to go around to all the graduations, including, tonight here at Wethersfield. Friday night was Windsor, and tomorrow we'll do Little Albert Bridge up on the hill, and Heartland will be tomorrow afternoon. So it's just great to see those kids all dressed up and ready to go off to their various high schools, and I think our elementary schools do a great job preparing them. So that's really a fun part of my job at the end of the year. And last but not least, we're waiting for those COVID updates for next year. We did get some information. I'm still admitting people here. Oh, that was you, Mark. I just admitted that. Oh, maybe it was your wife at home. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So we think though that we're going to be able to have a pretty normal opening, and that's one of the reasons why we revisited the school day. We're back to what is almost the pre-COVID day, and so we think that as long as that the majority of our folks are getting vaccinated, that we'll be able to have a normal opening. No distancing. We'll still be doing some of the things we've done now, getting kids outside a lot and doing some of the work that we did, but we're just hoping that we'll get good news from the agency and from the CDC about having a relatively normal school opening. But I thank everybody who put all the work into this year. It could not have happened without the cooperation of the parents, the kids, staff, our teachers, custodians, maintenance directors. There's a lot of stuff we don't know that went on behind the scenes. And we were sterilizing every half hour. We were blowing the cold air in at night for 4 hours, starting around midnight, and then letting air out in the morning. And all of our maintenance crew had to do that around the clock. Sometimes it was 24/7 work. So big shout out to them as well. But I think that's it for me.
Okay. We have two hands raised. Chelsea. Chelsea, did you have something to
No,
say?
she took it down.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I had to jump up before.
It's okay.
I think
Dave
I
Fuller?
see Dave Fuller, yeah.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'm on.
Yeah, we can see Dave.
Okay, I want to follow up, Superintendent Dave. I want to, on behalf of the whole town of Weathersfield, I want to thank Dean Marie Oakman for all of her service to this town. I see it firsthand with Candy, with first graders for years, and I guess that's about it. But I just wanted to make sure that you're recognized, and I just want to thank you for all the time that you spend worrying about our kids and through this whole difficult year and all the fun years too. So I don't think you should be, you should remember just this past year, because it's so much more than this past year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much. I'm humbled.
Thank you, David. Is that it for Hanson?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
I have a question.
okay. Go ahead, Jamie.
So, talking about COVID and all of that, I received an email from the Vermont Board of the School Board Association.
Yeah.
And if I understood it correctly, it looks like once the governor removes the state of
Right.
emergency, we are automatically back in person. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, that's a good question, Jenny. And I think, I don't know if everybody could hear that question, but essentially we're still in the governor's emergency order. I think the plan is going to be to lift that in early July. You talked about July 4th. Once the emergency order is lifted, then all of those guidelines and restraints that went along with that emergency order are also lifted, which, as you just said, would probably mean a normal opening of school. But I still think that there may be some guidelines that the Agency of Education will put out around, even things as simple as, what are going to be some of the rules around the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated, right? And I know the state's talking about that, but they haven't given us any direction on that. What do we do with the students under the age of 12, who we know right now can't get vaccinated, even if they wanted to get vaccinated? So I think we'll hear some of that stuff. But I think you're absolutely right, Jim. Once that emergency order is lifted, then I think we're pretty much back to normal.
But I mean more from a school board
Yeah.
perspective.
Oh, yeah, sure, exactly. Even in terms of meeting in person, I think we can still have remote options like we're doing tonight, because it does help with the turnout, but.
Yeah, I've enjoyed having more public.
But I think you're absolutely right. I think in July, as long as he lifts that emergency order, we're gonna be okay.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah.
Okay, so up next are items for discussion, and the first one for that is the legislative report from our state rep, John Arison. John?
Thank you for inviting me.
You wanna come move your chair here so you're on the screen,
Maybe
or
right
are
in
you?
front of the screen, John, would be good.
Is he on screen yet?
No, I
Is it a
can
big
move
moment?
it.
There you go.
Are you okay with
It's a
that?
big moment.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
It's okay.
First of all, thank you for serving. It's not for the fame and glory. You get a lot of criticism. It seems like at days you can't do anything right. I served on the select board for 16 years, and it does. Sometimes it seems thankless, but thank you. I was elected last November. The session started in January, and one of the first tasks was to fill out a form for the 5 committees in order you wanted to be on. Education wasn't on my list. And I thought, why did they put an electrical contractor in the education committee? And I found out very quickly that they liked to balance the committees, that our committee had a couple school board members, former teachers, current teachers, a car salesman, and an electrician. And it gave a good balance and different perspectives, because I think if everybody was an educator on the education committee, I think it would tend to be unbalanced. And we had a really good committee, a very productive committee. Everybody was polite to each other. Everybody's opinion was taken seriously. 45 bills were introduced. that were assigned to the Education Committee. And it was a real steep learning curve for me to realize exactly how many bills are presented in the legislature. I think we were up to almost 500. And what happens is the bills are assigned to various committees, and we were assigned 45. 11 made it out of committee, which means that they go to another committee usually. If they need money to implement it, they go to Ways and Means, to Appropriations. If it affects the revenue of the state, it goes to Ways and Means. And several of our bills are now sitting in one of those committees. All the bills that have left committee will get picked up again in January. If we don't pay attention and get our work done by May, those bills die right then and there. That doesn't mean they can't be reintroduced in the next session, but for the time being, they're gone. And I noticed that a lot of bills that came back were repeats. People have their pet projects and stuff they want to see. And a lot of them, to be quite honest, were redundant. So anyway, the ones that left committee, I think that and have actually been signed by the governor, and this is an important one, was H101, which was the literacy bill. And incidentally, what I say is all-encompassing for the state. And you folks may be thinking, well, you know, we're in pretty good shape with this, and it doesn't affect us. But the goal of the literacy bill is to screen for dyslexia early and evidence-based teaching to get all students, or as many students as possible, to a competent reading level by 4th grade, entering 4th grade. And you stop and think about it. If in 3rd grade, if you're a poor reader and you don't pick up on that, you slide backwards. And the goal is to get as many, if it's successful in its implementation, the goal is to get more kids off of IEPs. This may not go over too big in some of the districts, but the bill is, once again, we're using ESSER money, is to position staff at the district level that can implement a district-wide plan to implement the literacy, evidence-based literacy. It's a bill that actually has been in the works, I think, for at least 4 years, and the governor signed it, so that's a done deal. Another one that's the only ed bill that's been signed so far. The one I'm going to go over a few others that I have no reason to believe that the governor won't sign. You never know. Incidentally, he's going to hang on to the state of emergency as long as he can, appropriately can, because he gets to do a lot of things that once it's lifted, he won't be able to do anymore, which is fine. I mean, I personally think that the state of Vermont's done a tremendous job of COVID, better than most states. This bill, it was passed. I'll go over it quickly. It's called the Community Schools Bill. And it's a pilot program. There's funding for probably 4 schools to pick this program up. What is it? Well, you're probably not familiar, but Molly Stark School down in Bennington actually has this program running. They've been running it for over 10 years. And it basically wraps around the community. And what I mean by that is that they actually have dentists that can come in to the schools. They have medical that can come into the schools. They wrap themselves completely around the community. And one thing that they do is try to utilize the structures. Let's face it, in a few days, everybody kind of cleans out of here, and you have a beautiful facility that's not being used for several months. So that's what, in a nutshell, what community schools. But it's a pilot program, and you're going to have to apply for it. And I'm going to be very blunt. It's probably going to go to schools that are in worse position than Wethersfield is. which is appropriate, actually. This is the bill that I had the most involvement in. It was H 426, which is school assessment bill. It started out with language school construction. It had nothing to do with actual construction. I was amazed in testimony and committee that AOE couldn't even tell me exactly how many schools there are in the state of Vermont. And then you get your private school, the approved private schools, and they couldn't even tell you exactly how many public structures there are. I heard 300 or 325. Anyway, the school assessment will happen in 2 phases. The initial phase will be, and you're going to have visitors. They'll be announced. They'll come in. They'll do a quick run through. They'll look at your floor plans, and later they're going to come back and actually do an assessment of your building. Once again, like I said earlier, this building is in great shape. There's a lot of schools in the state of Vermont that are not in great shape. We saw videos of some of the schools and heard testimony from up in Northeast Kingdom with schools that truly are struggling with now. Well, I think a good example would be, just think if we didn't spend the money that we did here, what we would be working with. We had what's now a chip hopper. We had kids downstairs. That's not a good thing. Both the buildings were not in very good shape. And to be honest with you, I think the voters of Wethersfield made a very wise decision when the bond passed. It's a beautiful building. It's well taken care of. There was a lot of controversy, with the Perkinsville Village and closing and everything. And we also got in on the tail end of state funding, 30% state funding. There was a lot of brouhaha, if you will, because the state wasn't paying the payments on time. But what happened was there was push. So many schools were applying for that 30% that the state couldn't borrow the money that they needed to pay it off. And what did it take, David? 5 years?
Yeah.
5 years, and we got stuck paying the interest on
Because
the
of the
bond.
interest piece, right?
Right.
Right.
Which was uncomfortable. Anyway.
But they did pay it, right?
Right, and I think they finally paid the 90% on the
Yes,
chip boiler.
it's all done, yeah.
Okay, there was a lot of criticism, Montpelier, they don't know what they're doing, but it was, I'm going to circle back to the bill. With the school assessment, when it's complete, it will give the state the tools that we need to say, this school really needs to be rebuilt. No, this school just wants fancier building. The second part of the bill, and I think this is an important one, and actually I'm pushed on this as much as anybody, is a facility manager at the district level needs to be assigned to the buildings. I'm not saying we don't have one that does the job, but the facility manager, it doesn't mean a new position. There's somebody needs to be assigned with that authority to create the 5-year plan and update it yearly and submit it to AOE. And why do you need to do that? Because many schools in the state leaky roofs. And if the person, and this is my own opinion, but I think it holds true, if the facility manager is at that level and he comes in to you folks and says, we need to start putting money aside for a new roof now, because here it is, here's the 5-year plan, here we need a new roof. He's going to have a lot more weight because he's actually required by law to report to you folks that this is what needs to be done. The school probably, I can't think of anything other than maybe maintenance on the septic system that would need. However, when our bill went to the Senate for review, the Senate's got to make changes. But the big change that they made was required radon testing, unfunded. I would recommend that get it done. It all has to be done by 24. And I would recommend getting it done sooner than later, because people that procrastinate, it's going to be a rush. What it'll involve is you'll end up with canisters in every room that's occupied. You may have some disruption of classes, and you can have it part of the teaching process. That when the guys come in, oh, don't touch that. That we're testing for. However, if it does turn out that there's radon is a colorless, tasteless gas. It is decomposition of uranium in the soil, and it comes up through in this floor. The upper floor won't be tested because it doesn't need it. If the ventilation system is up to snuff, I'd say there's an excellent chance you guys will come out negative. The Vermont Department of Health has a program where they test, I think it's 5 or 8 schools a year, but the testing standard is that it's supposed to be done every 5 years in every building. It's not super expensive, and there was some discussion of whether or not bulk testing would help with the price. And the one person that he was from an environmental company and actually did the work at the Perkinsville School for the mold mitigation from Clay Point. And he goes, nah, he goes, you really aren't going to save a whole lot unless we work something out with the testing company. Anyway, think about that. Here it comes. Anybody following the Burlington School?
Yeah.
Okay. PCB. Where does it come from? Up until about 1980, it was in just about everything that they wanted to make elastic. Glue behind chalkboards, glue underneath the floor. Burlington High School, it was coming out of the caulking around the windows. That's how yeah. The Senate put in a section in what we call the big bill, which is about that thick and has all the numbers that PCB testing, and this has some money with it, is going to be required. Once again, you got a pretty new building, but you still could conceivably might have some issues on the ground floor here and a couple other places. But let's face it, you're in a lot better shape than probably a lot of schools that were built. There was a huge building boom up into the 70s with the union school districts. And what are we going to do? Tear all the schools in the state down? I mean, nationwide, or we're starting to hear from the what? Have they gone out of their minds? I mean, because when you identify these things, what do? Say, well, we got PCB. Parents are going to be upset. You're going to have a responsibility to actually do something about it. An architect that was testifying with us, he said they did have it in one school, that they were able to mitigate it by cutting the masonry around the windows and removing it. So Burlington, it seems to be the extreme, but whoever would have thought we'd be talking about tearing down a building the size of Burlington High School because of that contamination.
Scary.
S100, which has a comparable bill, H32, is uniform school breakfast. We get breakfast, right?
Free, yeah,
Free.
and free lunch too.
And
We
The
did
last couple of
this
years,
last
yeah.
year, and we will again next year too. Am I
Okay.
right on that?
this, if both those bills get signed, or excuse me, if S100 is not made it out of committee, it'll get picked up again in January. But that bill will make it perpetual. In other words, you're going to, and a couple of the committee members, one person in particular, didn't feel that it was proper to give out free food to people that make a fair amount of money. And the converse argument of that is that when you pick and choose who gets free, who doesn't, it gives a stigma everybody talks about. And one the committee member was very adamant about what it was like to be in school when some kids got crackers and some didn't. And that's to eliminate that stigma. There's a, and once again, we are using local products by
Yes.
Yeah,
what percent? Do you have a percentage or just as much as you can?
as much as we can, and I'd say it's over 25%. It's probably closer to 40. Greg's done a nice job.
Yeah.
Because the bill is written at 20.
Yeah.
Well, we bought cows and.
Yeah, we've been buying livestock.
Yeah.
You know,
And-
we're about as organic as we can
Ones
get.
or-
No, they're alive when we
When we-
slaughter them, but the kids adore the hamburger that we have. They know when they're frozen patties and when it's our fresh
Okay.
meat. They know.
Yeah, I
And we
think
get a lot of, not so much during COVID, it's been a little difficult, but when we had a fresh salad bar every day, we had from Deep Meadows Farm, we had fresh beets every day, we had fresh cucumber. That salad bar was to die for.
Yeah. And that has a doubling effect because it puts money back into the local
It does.
economy.
It
Every
does.
dollar you spend usually generates 3.
Exactly.
So, as opposed to seeing the Cisco truck pull up with a bunch of,
Exactly.
so anyway.
They still do deliver occasionally.
Well,
Cisco,
this
can't get rid of them completely.
My thought was, what do they do? Eat turnips and potatoes all winter long?
I know.
Limited growing.
Limited.
Lettuce is, I'm a little reluctant. It seems to me they should try to open it up a little bit more because there's some really active greenhouses and,
Yeah, now.
yeah,
Yeah.
but they're saying Vermont only.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh,
so it has to be, well, it's our money. Let's
Yeah.
keep it in the state.
yeah, that makes sense.
But there's some really good produce coming out of greenhouses in Maine
Yeah.
and even up in Canada.
Yeah.
I was asked to check on the excess spending threshold, if that was going to be eliminated. I'm not going to, I got to check, and I'll get back and tell you on that. I went over radon, PCB. This is not legislative, but I'm sure people are watching the court case on whether or not you're going to have to start putting money
Tuition
religious schools.
toward religious.
Right. And
I'd say.
for us, I don't, because it wouldn't involve K through 8, because we have a K through 8 school.
Not right now.
And to be quite honest, the religious schools tend to be less expensive than the public schools.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's a huge concern
Not a
for us,
financial.
other than the philosophical. Should we be sending money to schools? And there was some discussion in committee and testimony, because the Vermont Constitution is very clear that that you're not supposed to do that. And they were trying to come up with some wordage that any money that got would not be that was any public money that was sent to a religious school would not be spent on religious purposes. That's a tough one. My daughter went to St. Mary's, and the day everything has some
Went into a pot.
right.
But, you know, John, I think the rub is that Vermont puts out a list of all approved high schools, and they have religious Catholic schools
Yeah, they put them
on
on
that
that
approved
list.
list. So that's really been, you know, I was thinking about Kelly Murphy 10 years ago, talking with the board about that very thing, saying, look, it's on the approved list. Why can't we spend local dollars for an approved public high school? So it's, the debate's been going on.
We've been dealing with this.
Yeah,
For
I
a
can
while.
speak to that because a few years ago we had that brought up again. And the clarifying piece was if religion is part of the curriculum, the state does not allow it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
They're still on
There's
that
still,
list.
there may be a public school, but if religion
Right.
is their curriculum,
And now the courts are
They don't-
starting to change that a little bit.
They are,
Yes.
and so I think it's an evolution, and so keep an eye on it. As far as financial impact and Weathersfield, I don't think it's going to be that big a deal.
Probably financial.
One of the many task force bills that were approved this year was, everybody heard the word pupil, you know what pupil waiting is?
Yeah.
It's not kids waiting for the bus, unfortunately.
Right.
Back when Act 46 was instituted, if you will, numbers were pulled out of the air for what the assigned value for students. And the big one was students in poverty, and that was originally, I remember you at the meeting, the kids that were on free or reduced price lunch, and that was supposed to be the metric that that said you were in poverty. I didn't hear a clear answer on what the new metric will be, but it's obviously got to have something to do with income. And then it didn't happen this session, it happened last session. A commission was formed in UVM. A woman named Chloe Wexler did an extensive study, it's about that thick, analyzing the weighting factors. And it's going to be painful to implement. There's going to be, they're talking about the poverty one going from 1.25 as high as 3.5. And that is going to shift an enormous, let me use a different adjective. It's going to shift a substantial amount of money away from some districts and into others. Once again, it goes back to the Brigham decision, where Vermont has tried really hard to make education equitable from the far corners in the north to the far corners in the south. And that's part of it. There other part of that will be rural. How many students per square mile are there? And right now, this is what they call a small school grant. We're not the only one that's probably eligible to Albert Bridge. Okay. Yeah. So, and I don't think the school would even qualify for that. It might under the new formula. What I'd like to recommend or ask is that maybe in February, because the report is supposed to be finished by January, and it's going to be a very tough subject that we're going to be taking up very early in next session. And I'd like to be able to keep you folks up to breath as much as I can, because my gut feeling is that we are going to be losing money.
You could be right. You could be right.
Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe we'll come out in the middle. I know the Chittenden County supposedly is getting way too much money. I'm sure they don't see it that way.
Yeah. The other thing about that, John, is I think part of that bill is going to be how they do calculate the poverty, because I think what they're finding is free and reduced lunch applications. It's not the way to do it, because a lot of people don't fill them out. There's the stigma attached. Of course, we haven't. With universal lunch, we've been way down on those counts. But I think what they're thinking about now is, because we've got all the income data in Vermont. Yeah. We've got, all the Medicaid and Medicare and all the welfare data. So I think they're thinking about something that puts all that together and then identifies the community. But I tend to agree with you. I don't, Weathersfield, in some ways, when we've watched this happen in Gene's tenure, it's gentrified a bit. I mean, you've got your home values gone up, and the kids who are registering are, they're coming from really good, stable families. I mean, that's a good thing, I think, for Weathersfield. But when you start throwing this poverty money at schools, it might not turn out too well for Weathersfield.
Hopefully I'm not going to speak a little bit out of turn, but for me, I'm having a hard time swallowing that it takes 3.5 times more to educate a kid out of poverty than it does a regular kid. There's probably kids come from wealthy families that cost 3.5 times more to educate.
Exactly.
So I realize that when you come from a poor family, and we probably all saw it when we went to school, that you automatically come in at least some disadvantage, whether it be the clothes you wear or
books you read.
Books you read. The literacy bill's going to take care of that.
That's right. That'll be done.
Anyway, that's one to really keep an eye on. What I missed?
No, I think you hit them all.
Wow.
All the big ones. Yeah, you got them.
Good.
That's great. That's great.
E-finance.
Oh, you finance, yeah. Yeah.
This doesn't affect, well, it does
Well, it
affect
does
you
affect
guys.
everybody
Yeah.
here because we're all in this e-finance world.
The state of Vermont hired a company, it has a name other than e-finance.
Well, it's, yeah, I
School something, anyway.
Yeah.
The program's called
It's
e-finance.
part of Power School, actually.
It was, the purpose of it was to get all schools on the same finance system so that data could be collected adequately. When you got one on this and one on that, there was no way to bring the numbers together. It didn't work very well. They've tried about 4 times to correct it. What's today, the 8th? They got to the end of this month to fix it, period. I don't know what plan B is because I don't think there is one.
They haven't told
But
us.
I will say that I've been talking with Steve Heyer. He works part-time with Rivendell, and they are using the new e-finance 20.1, I think it is, or something like that. And he says it's working.
It's working?
He said they are not having problems.
So that must have been an upgrade.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge.
Yeah, it is. And you know, AOE is very aware that the problem is severe. And I mean, when you can't reconcile your books, there's something wrong with the program. Anyway, let's keep our fingers crossed that that one's.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Thanks, John.
Very good job. Yeah, I go back in the corner.
Back in the corner. Back in the corner.
And I gotta say, this is refreshing, different
Oh,
than going to select.
are there any
board
questions?
meetings. Which I was at last night.
These are much nicer.
We haven't started. Oh, it's fuller there still.
Yeah, I know. Dave on the line still?
Yeah, I think he is. He's probably not liking those words.
Do we have any hands raised or any questions for
I'm
John?
looking, any questions for John? I don't see any hands, so thanks, John.
Okay. Thank you, John.
I'll hang around for a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, hang around, sure.
I hear that,
Cool, yeah.
I hear that Wendy is on the line.
Wendy is on the line. She was having a little trouble getting in, but I think she is on the line. Wendy, are you still with us?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, I did have trouble getting in, and now I'm worried because there's quite a storm happening behind me here. I'm just, yes, speaking to you about the PTO and our depleted account, and we would like permission from the board to hold our annual car show outdoors October 2nd with a rain date of the 3rd, pending the opening of the school grounds by the task force. And we'd also like permission to have 1 or 2 totally online fundraisers. Right now, we have not chosen what it would be. We're making the decision this summer, but those will be totally online to try to get our funds back to meet our budget.
Okay. Does anyone have anything to say about that? Or
Yay!
Yay!
Absolutely. Go
We're almost
ahead.
back. We're
Yeah.
almost back.
Yeah, I think everybody's very supportive of that. We'll handle that under items for action. But thank you very much, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we'll get to the recovery plan. I know there've been a lot of changes to the recovery plan since our last meeting. We gave David a lot of feedback.
Yeah. We got plenty of feedback. We did.
And I'm happy to say that some changes were made.
Yeah.
And some accommodations, and we're very happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if David, if you would like to go over what those changes are,
Yeah, no.
or Angie or whoever.
Yeah, and I think Angie, are you with us here? I don't see Angie.
She's at an interview, David.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's at an interview. Okay, all right. Yeah, so I mean, I can do it really quickly, and I think we tried to describe too that, you know, this was a work in progress, and certainly, by the way, Weathersfield was not the only district where we got feedback. We got feedback from The district staff gave us some pretty good feedback when we rolled out the plan. I think part of what was confusing last time is there are stages and steps to how this works. The first thing we had to do is we had to submit, our data, and Angie, had to do that, I think, by the end of May, and that essentially was a look at our Track My Progress. We didn't have much in SBAC, Fontes and Pinnell. We looked at those indicators, and actually across the SU, and I'd like to think it's because we were in 5 days a week, but we certainly saw certain pockets of kids that had lost over the pandemic, but it wasn't as bad as I think we had originally thought. So the data went in, and then what had to go in next was the recovery plan. And I'm not even sure, Katie, do you know whether I don't even think that's been submitted yet. Has it?
No, Angie's just about to do those pieces.
Yeah, I think it's due. I was going to say it's in the middle of June. June
18th. She got
June
an
18th.
extension. Yep.
Right.
Extension filed for?
And we filed for an extension, and again, help me out, Katie, if you can. I think the extension was really for the ESSER spending, right? That was the recovery plan has to be in by mid-June. Are we right about that?
Yes.
Yes, and that includes all of the year one pieces that we've been talking about, the summer academy, all the new hires we've talked about, things like and when I say recovery plan, I'm also saying with that is the year one spending plan, right? I think the year one spending plan is where we got an extension. So that's helpful, but I don't think that extension is I think that's pretty much right on the tail of the end of June too. But anyhow, most of year two is done. We did take that feedback. Jean reported that, some of those changes did impact Weathersfield. Not only did we get the third grade position, but we also got the middle school educator. We were able to increase some of the time that we're going to be able to give to intervention work over next year. And so and the after school programming that Jean talked about earlier, I think those are some of the real positive things that have happened. I will tell you though, that the state tells us that even though we're submitting it, it's a work in progress, and that they will accept amendments at any time. We can amend the plan, we can change the plan. We also have to look at years 2 and years 3. And that's going to be a much more involved process, involving even more community input, which will be good. So all that we are really submitting right now is that year one plan, and I think all of our schools did pretty well. We also took a look at some of the structural needs that we had put in there. I think you might recall, or the board will recall, that we had originally, and partly because of e-finance that John was just talking about, and e-finance allows you, or this particular program allows you to do a lot of your purchasing electronically, and we had been slowly phasing that in over the last 2 or 3 years, and we were going to try to do that full time, but we always struggled with that expense, so that purchasing agent position was at least for right now was taken out. And again, if Angie were here, she could certainly probably do a better job than I do of where we are. But we've been working hard over the last 2 weeks to get this to a point where I think it's fair and equitable. It's really addressing the needs, because remember, the key to this is recovery, right? It's really addressing the needs for those kinds of tutorial programs, after school programs, summer academy programs, interventionists, and also, and this is why the middle school position and the third grade position were critical, is that one of the places that we identified in our data where we saw sort of a disaggregation of the data was with class size, right? The smaller you could keep the classes, and this is no surprise to anybody who's an educator, the better you could educate. And And so, again, our class sizes aren't, we're not talking about 4 or 5 kids per classroom, but, we didn't want to have classes that were 24, 25, 27. And so we put a lot of that ESSA money toward reducing those class sizes. And that's how we were able to justify the 3rd grade position at Weathersfield and ultimately the middle school position. So I think a lot of work has gone into this. I think the feedback was good. And I will tell you, it wasn't just from Weathersfield. I mean, clearly we got quite a bit of feedback from Weathersfield, but we also got it from Stutney, and we got it from Heartland. But that was good because that helps the administrative team put this together. I will tell you that what we have to do now is submit the recovery plan and the year 1 spending plan. And then part of this is managing, and that's why I think we have to continually update and report on data. We have to make sure that the money we're spending is in fact having the impact we want it to have. And that's why, we hired a assistant recovery / data coordinator. That there's going to be a lot of work that's entailed to be able to justify the money that's being spent. And I think the other important thing to remember here is this money is reimbursement money. That's why we're able to go out and hire these positions now, because the state, has told us that's a lot of flexibility in the way you tie it to recovery. But you can go ahead and start spending that money now because it's totally reimbursement. What will happen is Ed will put together a plan in January for a certain percentage of that money that we're spending in year 1. And then because we did this with the CARES money, which was really last year's COVID money. And then Ed gets a very huge check, a very big check, a bigger check than I've ever seen in my day, as reimbursement for all of those positions that we reported on tonight. And then they'll take another look at it in January, then in June, again, keeping our data plan flowing. But I'll give a lot of credit to the administrative team. A lot of this is learning how to share and cooperate. And, if somebody's going to get something, somebody else sometimes has to give up something. So I think that's been our last couple of weeks. But I think in the end, the positions that we've settled on for year 1 are the positions that are going to really help move our kids forward. So I don't know if anybody on the administrative team wants to add to that, or if Angie's still in the interview, then that's fine. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask those questions if you have any.
I believe, Jackie, did you want to say something?
I filled out the survey today, so Angie is probably pretty clear on how on where I stand on this. First of all, thank you, because it has come a long way from where we first saw it, which is great.
Is this gone now?
No, that was sent today. It's in. The
That's-
purchasing agent is in under Esther too. I saw it.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. You said it was out and we just received an
that-
update
okay.
in there.
Yeah, we got it today.
That's an update.
Yeah, today
Okay,
we got
yeah.
it.
The other question I would have, which I received the update after I put in my survey, and so I noticed that the assistant recovery coordinator that actually went up by a significant amount. And then Angie also said that the summer school program, which I'm not alone in this room in thinking that's not a grand idea as we know it, unless there's some plan that we haven't seen, it doesn't work well for our community. And she let us know that dollar amount was off, and it was a significant amount that it went up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that, but presently that summer program doesn't work for us. I mean,
We've got 9 kids right now who have filled out the paperwork.
it's
Now, that
not,
could
it's
be
not
different.
inclusive. It limits. It's not inclusive for all 4 districts. I don't know how other districts feel about it, but it's transportation to and from is ridiculously priced. It's a half day program, is what I understand. Really?
3 hours.
3 hours. And the price went up significantly for 3 hours.
I mean, it could have gone
$74,000. is what
Yeah,
we're being told.
before the price went up, I had figured it out that like Weathersfield's sort of share of it was like over $35,000, and to only be servicing 9 of our kids for that.
Yeah, I think those numbers are, we gotta be careful with numbers, because I think we're serving a lot more than 9 Weathersfield kids, is that correct?
No,
Yes, we have 22 students from Weathersfield attending.
only 9 filled out the paperwork. I checked with Patty Parmela on Friday.
We
Only
have
9
20,
students. She asked if I would reach out to the others, and I know those students. Some of them are 8th graders who have no interest in that program. I know they were eligible, Katie. I know there were 20 some odd invited to the program. Friday, you had 9 students.
I think we gotta be careful with the numbers.
we still have paperwork. Yeah, sorry. We still have paperwork coming in, and we have over 9 students with the paperwork in, and 22 students includes pre-K through the 9th grade. So I just went in and added it up as I was sitting here. So we are still waiting for some straggling paperwork.
Even at 22 students, we could do it so much less, more cost effective, much more cost effective, right in our own community, and that number of students would drastically increase.
I think David said in an email recently that he sent out those weekly blasts, and he said that this year we're kind of boxed into that because we made the commitment, but that, and if I'm misspeaking, correct me, but he wrote in that email that hopefully in the next few years we'll have it home. In other words, it won't be centralized. Am I right on that?
Well, all I know is that we worked on this as an administrative team, and partly because of COVID conditions, and we knew we were going to be starting in July, and that you know, we, as John said, I don't know when the emergency order will be lifted, but that was one consideration, and we felt, I think, as an administrative team, that if we're going to provide transportation, that both in terms of staffing and staffing patterns, that it was going to be important. At first, we had a hard time getting staff, but I think this was, you know, this I thought was an administrative decision. It was not an option to have locally based programs. I wasn't in the weeds of that. I mean, so I don't know how to explain that, but I know that it's staffed. Angie, you can speak, because I know the dollar amount did change, because that was around salaries for staff that were going to be hired to do this, because these are licensed teachers that are going to be doing the recovery work. We also have some support staff members, but these are licensed teachers who are going to be working with these kids in small pods or in small units. But I don't think we ever discussed site-based summer program. Did we? I don't remember that discussion.
No, we didn't. What we're saying is that we could have
No, but
done
the
it for a lot
administrators
less.
who run the schools, who know the kids, who know the needs of the kids, right? We don't open it up to a public vote about where summer school is going to happen. You've got the professionals on the ground with the technical expertise deciding what is the best way to deliver services to these kids. That's what I'm saying. And we don't come rushing in at the last minute and say, we don't like that, we could do it better ourselves. I just don't agree with that way of managing a ship. You know, and I don't think you send a survey out to the staff, well, I'm sorry, to the community saying, you know, where should the summer school be? That doesn't make any sense to me, but maybe I'm not hearing you correctly.
Kristen would like to speak.
Go ahead, Kristen.
I also don't totally understand just because it's always been here, so that would make more sense to me. Like, I don't understand the whole.
Yeah, it wasn't really
community.
presented to us as an
Right.
option. We were told if we're going to have summer school this year, it has to be SUY.
Right, why? Right.
Yeah.
But who is on our administrative team? Weathersfield's administrative team.
Well, at the administrative team meetings, Jean Marie goes to the administrative team meetings. But what I'm saying is, a lot of schools, not just Weathersfield, cut their summer program. You cut summer programming out of your budget. So then when we all got together, we decided that, well, if we centralize a program, use ESSA funds, then we can service these kids from Weathersfield, from Heartland, from Albert Bridge, from Windsor, right?
Yes, but the idea of centralizing it was supposed to service the same number of kids, plus it was supposed to be cheaper. And this is way out of control, more expensive.
Well, I don't know about cheaper. I don't know if we ever talked about,
We were told it would be more, that's what we were told. Is that what everybody else heard? Because I remember hearing that it was gonna be more affordable to have it as an SU as opposed to building based.
I don't think the reason for centralizing it, and again, we've got Angie and Katie, I don't think the reason to centralize it was based on finances, right? I mean, it wasn't that we could do it cheaper in one location. I mean, some of that might have factored in, but.
It was part of the recovery plan to keep class sizes small, identify all of the students, and as you said, Dr. Baker, identified at the admin team level when we had to make all of these decisions at the time, combined with COVID restrictions, the SU wide need of identifying students. I think there was a conversation when at some point we had considered within special ed to centralize services last year, and that might have carried over to a conversation this year, because that would be more cost effective than having everything spread out over the SU. But that wasn't a factor in any of this decision making. This was really focused on what for our recovery plan to keep the small class sizes and have the number of staff. We did a lot of legwork before any of this was solidified to find staff interest, how many we had, where the students were. All of that data was looked at before anything was made. And we were starting all of this legwork in January and February when we knew, what we were getting the inkling of what recovery plans needed to look like. So the decision wasn't made in a vacuum. It was made with a lot of data and information as a team.
Yeah. Well, some of this was started, I mean, you say January and February, I think you're absolutely right. It started, somewhat pre-vaccine, right? I mean, we had to get going in terms of hiring, in terms of following those then COVID restrictions. And again, those guidelines have changed. We did a much better job of administering vaccines. We're hoping that the governor's order will be lifted in early July. But this planning by Angie, Katie, and the administrative team, as Katie just said, started back in January or February. And it's like, that was what people thought would be the best way to keep it safe, to keep it secure, to keep it well-staffed. The issue was transportation, but we felt with ESSER money, we had the money to transport kids. We haven't had that in the past, so we haven't been able to do it. But again, I'm not criticizing anybody, but it's kind of tough to rush in at the 10th hour and then say, if we could do it locally, that would be better. Yeah, I think it probably would be better, but it's not like in the next week or so, we're gonna.
Did the board freeze?
They did for me.
I think the board is frozen.
Yep.
So let's give them a minute to reboot.
Yep, that's, we're all looking at each other thinking the same thing.
They may have lost power. The storm's hitting right now.
Going on this rain. I'm driving on Heartland.
I might go, because I think you're going to lose power here.
That's okay. I got a phone flashlight.
Angie, you're unmuted.
Hi, we're just talking about whether or not we're going to lose, we're at central office, whether or not we're going to lose power. Our internet's holding up. We just had a big lightning flash just as David froze. I'm not sure what the protocol is here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. Let's just give them a few more minutes and hopefully they can join us.
something else. But if for that kind of money and for bridging the gap in education, isn't this money to help out with what kids, students have missed out on during COVID?
I think we're up now,
That's a big disparity to me. It's not inclusive. I'm not a fan.
Just really take a, I just wanted to let everybody online know that we lost power here at the school for a moment, and so that's why there was a disruption in the video. But thank you for hanging in there and waiting for us to come back.
So it has
Go back to
nothing to
your
do with
calendar
whether
and
we
just
cut
sign on.
summer program or not. It has to do with if we're going to allow it, it needs to be a bigger group.
Yeah, it's not servicing enough kids for me to think it's worth that kind of money. Or, I don't know, it just, I'm not sure if there's any, how is this money being spent in check? I mean, we have like the full amount, but where is all this money going to, and who's approving all these, all the spending?
Yeah, so I mean, I very much trust the people who are coordinating this program. Katie Ahern, Jen Duranzo, and Patty Carmelo are Patty Carmelo and Jen Duranzo are the directors. I think there was an all-out effort to identify the kids and to try to get them to come. We've got regular ed kids, we've got special ed kids, we've got kids who are on 504s, and we have over 100 kids being served across the SU. And I don't know how many Weathersfield serviced last year, but I know if you added up all the extended year service kids that we had in all 4 districts, it would not have numbered 100. So now the cost is a different story. I think it's, the cost of this program, I think, is basically staff salaries or staff stipends, right? The coordinators are getting a stipend, the teachers are getting paid, and quite frankly, I don't know when you did it here, whether or not you just gave a stipend for that summer work, but we have to follow the contract obligation. We have to pay a certain hourly rate, by contract for the professional teachers. And Angie, maybe you could explain better why it went up, because I know you talked to me about this last week, that we hadn't accounted for several of the staff members at that point, right? That needed to get paid for those half days. So just to make sure that because I know we were off for a while, just to make sure that Angie and Katie understand what the board's questioning is the amount of money for 100 kids, right? That when you're servicing 100 kids in small pods for recovery, because this is going to be intensive 3-hour work and we're keeping those pods small. I think right now what's in there totally for the budget, and I know we don't have the transportation number. We don't have a firm transportation number right now. We should have that. I saw an email today. Maybe we have that number now, but do you want to address why it's costing what it's costing to run the academy for 5 weeks, half days with transportation and staff?
Yeah, just so everybody knows, I think it was while we were offline.
Right.
The full amount that the summer academy is costing the SU is $212,000, and it's servicing, I guess, about 100 kids for 5 weeks, half days.
And by the way, I read an article in the Vermont Digger just yesterday or the day before that said there are a lot of districts around us, and I'm not making excuses, that again found it difficult to find staff, to find kids. They're not running summer programs this year. I can send you that article.
No, I've seen that. Yes.
We worked our tail off to get these 100 kids into this recovery program. But again, I don't have the budget in front of me, and I don't think we need to get into all the explicits. We can at a future time with the board. I mean, we certainly deserve that. The SU board deserves that. But what, do you want to talk a little bit about what's driving that cost? That, because right now, I guess you said it's in the budget for what, 212,000?
Yes.
That's for not just this year. So Angie, do you want to? Angie's working the numbers in
3 years?
Yes, that addresses several years, not just one. So some of the funds came out of ESSER 1, some are coming out of ESSER 2, and Angie and I just spent a considerable amount of time making sure that we had the right numbers, and some of it's being pulled out of special ed, some of it's being pulled out of ESSER. But Angie, it was one of those things as we were figuring it out of where we put things and where we didn't as we were reviewing the SR2 for, as you look at things and get pretty dizzy, but it's staffing costs. I mean, we don't have any other than staffing and transportation. Those are the only two costs that are in there. And I couldn't hear what the person said, what amount they're looking at. I think Angie and I both need to
Yeah,
hear that.
let's go back, because sometimes we throw numbers out there and then those numbers stick, right?
Right.
Like, last number we threw out at a meeting like this was that we're getting $14 million in ESSER money over the next 3 years.
What did you do with that, David?
I don't know what happened to the other, I don't know what happened to the other 10 million, but we're only getting just under 4 million. But are we spending this summer $212,000 to educate 100 kids? Is that what we're spending this summer?
So the numbers that Anne Marie is referring to is in ESSER 1. We submitted a budget for summer school that's approximately 114,000. The ESSER 2 budget that I provided the board, all board members across the supervisory union, this earlier today shows an amount of $98,000, which includes additional staff. So we originally funded 10 classroom teachers, and now we have this budget shows 19. Again, these are moving parts, and that number is changing as we are reviewing the numbers every day until it's submitted. And even after it's submitted, we are going to be reviewing the numbers because there is variability in the number of staff that in the end say they really can't commit, or the number of staff that we have hired. So those numbers are changing. And so the new figure was to reflect those 9 staff people that we hadn't included in ESSER 1. And so that was the change. And then we also added $2,000 in supplies. So that 98,000 is those 9 employees plus that 2,000 in supplies plus 24,000 in transportation. I would like to offer you as comparison the last time I started to budget a summer school was in FY20, which of course you know did not happen. And for Weathersfield, we were offering, hold on a second, let me pull up my spreadsheet. Because this was a title funded program, we had to pay teachers an hourly rate. The 2 teachers that we paid that year were less than the hourly rate that we have negotiated in this year's master agreement. And I only had 48 hours for the classroom teacher and then 60 hours for the other teacher. And that included 12 hours of coordination. Our contracts are going out for 100 hours, right, Katie? 100 hours or 106 hours because we're giving teachers additional prep time. That is twice the amount that we have provided in summer school in the past.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
I'm sorry, the timeline again, is this the expenditure for this summer only, or do any of these funds roll over that have been budgeted? Are they rolled over at all into the following planned summer services?
Right now we have that 212 is for FY21. And any funds that are not spent will roll into. We have 200,000 budget. We're thinking 200,000 for the next 2 years, and maybe a third year if the learning needs are there. I mean, this program includes BCBAs. It includes special educators. It includes speech language. It is a more robust program than in terms of just the amount of time that we've been able to offer students in the past. And I know that what the Agency of Education tells us about summer programming is that we should be looking at in excess of 4 weeks, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Those are the programs, which makes total sense, right? That we would see less summer loss of learning if those programs are longer.
So licensed professionals this summer, if I've got this right, licensed professionals, and I would assume that would include the SLPs who have a license, right? Obviously the special educators, the regular ed teachers. How many licensed professionals are there right now? Do you have that number, Katie?
Let me count up the list because 19 of them went into ESSER, and then we pulled some out to pay through Idea B funds as well as local, because I had put some summer money aside. So I think, because I don't want to missay, so if we can, I have a lot of spreadsheets.
Oh, good.
I see 29 on our list right now, and that includes that person that you guys discovered today that we had left off the list.
That was the 9, and so it ends up being 10. So 29, and 10 of those are licensed special ed professionals that are coming out of a different funding stream.
Okay, 10 of those, so 29. Yeah. So it would be 19 that are coming out of the ESSA stream, and those are licensed professionals, right? And so when we hire a licensed professional, what I'm hearing, right, because I know we always do this, we provide some planning time and prep time, right? Because this isn't just a student coming to us with an assignment that they couldn't complete and we're doing tutoring, right? We're actually planning recovery lessons so these kids can actually gain in reading, gain in math, right? As we go forward. So do you know what we provided for planning hours per, in other words, was it every teaching hour we gave a planning hour? Is that how that worked or no?
It's every, for every 3 hours, they get an hour of prep time.
Okay.
And we provided 10 additional prep hours for prepping at the, or they could use that throughout the time of the program, but also for pre-preparation.
And I just want to give Jackie an opportunity too to just be a little clearer. Not that this is not a criticism, but just, I don't know if you heard Jackie's comment, right? That she wasn't sure that we were, I think you said inclusive enough or reaching enough kids. Is that what you were saying?
Yes. Yeah, a parent just wrote that in the chat too. Chelsea said it was not inclusive.
So if we wanted to fund our own summer school program locally, for what it was, right, was 11,000.
Was 11,000.
I mean, we could have used some of the ESSER money for something, I guess, that supports Weathersfield. I just have only heard negative things from Weathersfield, so maybe it does fit Windsor and Hermanus County and Heartland better than us. But I'm just saying, if we wanted to fund it, it would be much less locally, and then use ESSER funds to fund something else.
Yeah,
but
I think at this point it's too late for this.
Yeah, I don't think
we would find the staff.
But if they're talking about next year.
For next year, yeah. For next year,
students
if there would be some opportunity.
But I think the data would be very telling. If in fact at the end of summer school there were 9 Weathersfield students that participated, and that would be the data, then you would know that probably would not be a good fit for Weathersfield for an SU program.
But I also think I assume Angie and Katie are hearing what Kristen is saying too, right? I mean, I'm just finding it hard to believe that Weathersfield could run a program for $11,000 that included speech language, BCBAs, mental health clinicians and counseling, the kinds of recovery teaching that's going on. That's not what I remember in the program that was run at Weathersfield. I mean, I think it was a great program at Weathersfield, and I think you had several people who did a great job with those kids.
We had the IEP services in tandem. So we had 25 to 30 kids who participated in the program. And then we had our SLP, our OT, our case managers here on campus, and they could pull kids or they pushed in with kids, but those kids were served as well as others.
And Katie, that might have been before your time. So, I mean, I know it's hard for you to speak to what might have happened here in those summers past.
It was fragmented for the special ed services, and we originally were consolidating next year for special ed services. So it was less of individual teams making decisions on who was available for staffing in individual buildings versus what we could do on a, taking that equation out. Because
I would assume
we ended up having some students last year from Weathersfield serviced by other special educators, because we didn't have Weathersfield staff to work with them remotely during ESY. So it's a difficult thing to find special education staff consistently over the summer and look at what student needs are before we look at staffing. So I think it's something to explore for next year.
But Katie, and again, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, people are being very patient, but when you offer extended special education, like Jean just described, special education extended school year services, right? SLP work, IEP work, my understanding is that comes out of special education funding for those extended year services, right? That's not a part of the $11,000 that Weathersfield would have spent on a summer program. Is that true or no?
That's correct. We ESSER funds are different because they're allowed to be used on any student for any reason. It doesn't differentiate between that need, but for ESY services, it has been pulled directly from special education services. So speech, special education, OT, PT, all of that. So that's paid out of the special education budget. And I can pull some historical numbers looking at that and number of students served, and look at also what it would cost to embed. And I think that that's part of what we're doing this year. We're embedding those specialists in each classroom as part of the recovery plan. We're embedding some of the specialists, as Angie mentioned, BCBAs, speech language pathologists, speech assistants within classrooms to work with all students, not just as part of individual ESY, even though some individual ESY will still be occurring. So that would look very different at programs separately. We were already at the table two summers ago trying to figure out how to make a more robust program. And then obviously we got side railed spring of 2000. But so I think this year we did the very best we could with the information that we had and reached out to as many students as we could identify, trying to pull them in with the staff that we have and numbers. And we have a whole year to plan otherwise if communities want to do something differently.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be great to definitely take the time to plan something for next year
Well, we should look
is
at
better. Yeah, to look at it, just to
We
see
should
if
do
there's
a real
something
cost
that
comparison.
that can benefit Weathersfield families more. Because if it ends up only 9 of our kids go there, then it's not benefiting us to the extent.
We'll keep
and I
you
understand
posted.
that you guys are doing a great and amazing program, but if our kids aren't going to it,
Was this open to the entire student body or only
absolutely not.
Only invited students.
So we're providing
only targeted students.
This high
Some
per pupil cost is based on the fact that these are the students that we feel as the SU are the
Not
most at
everyone.
risk.
Not everybody.
In March,
lot
they
of-
asked for the Track My Progress. It began in March.
Okay.
And they asked for my Track My Progress scores. BJ, you recall the spreadsheet. It was for January scores. And we identified kids with scores of 40 or less. And you know how many are in that program now. Then in April, and I think you and I were right on the ball before it was asked, we provided the second spreadsheet with a list of our students who scored 40 or below, which would be in the blue, in the red and the yellow. And again, you know what I know, who they are, and we also know who the 9 are. It was not open to everyone. It was very specific.
So
It was targeted in all the buildings.
That's a big cost difference. You understand, we're wrapping around the students.
Yeah, we're wrapping around targeted students.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for next.
And by the way, targeted regular ed students, targeted special ed students, and targeted 504 students.
But I can specifically speak that of the 9, my child scored fine on Track My Progress, but he's part of summer school because he's on an IEP.
Okay.
There were two criteria, whether they were identified through Track My Progress or identified through ESY services. So those are the two. So Track My Progress overlapped with a lot of students who were identified in IEPs, and some were not overlapped between Track My Progress scores and a team decision for IEP ESY services. So identified students for our recovery plan included all of them.
So I just want to just get any more comments off the board, and then I want to go to the people online, but I want to just make sure anybody else has anything they want to say.
Just for next year, I mean, we are right now, but I think for next year, it should be one of our highest priorities to make a more centralized unit that's less targeted for our general student population here on site. So if we can start planning for that in the fall when we get into the next
budget cycle. Budget cycle.
Slog, we will.
Yes. Anybody else have anything else to say about I guess we're doing Summer Academy right now, sort of mixed up. But,
well, it's part of the recovery plan.
Yeah. So I see that Elizabeth Craig has her hand up.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I just wanted to point out, I understand that you all had a challenging task in front of you for planning this, and I recognize that, but I do want to point out that we're kind of comparing apples and oranges here, because when we talk about the $11,000 that was used to run a summer program at Wethersfield School last year, or in previous years, that was strictly a regular ed program, and it was separate from the ESY special education. I certainly applaud the efforts to see how you can best improve your special ed extended school year services. But I think where it's become messy is that the recovery program and the special ed extended year services have been combined. And that's a large reason of why you have all those specialists and why you have a robust program this summer in a centralized location, is because of all of those special ed needs. I hear that you said they will be working with all students in the different cohorts. But I think the big thing that's being forgotten here is that the Track My Progress scores and the identification of students on IEPs and other educational plans doesn't really take into account the social emotional needs of all of our regular education students that became a huge factor because of the pandemic. And I think that should have been one of the highest priorities when planning the summer recovery program. Of a parent of 2 children who blew us away on their Track My Progress scores, it would have been great to be able to have them in a structured program for the summer to catch up on some of that social emotional time that they missed for so long.
Very much agree, Elizabeth. Thank you. Ethan? I guess that was an old hand.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to comment on what Elizabeth said, because Elizabeth, I think you did hit it on the head. I think I think you're right that the talking apples and oranges is, because we can have robust programs, we can have robust regular ed programs, we can have robust sort of inclusive programs. But I think what happened this year, because we had to start the planning so early, we had to identify all those challenges and all those needs. And it sort of got integrated with the extended year services for special education students and some of those other programs. I even think there was some attempt to identify some of those social and emotional needs. And I know that we've got those HCRS clinicians that are going to be working with us this summer. But I just want to say, I agree with you. And I think that what we've got to do next year as we do our planning is, if we want, locally grown programs that are going to service a different kind of need than an extended year service need, then we have to start either budgeting for that locally, or we have to start putting that into our our ESSA 2 and ESSA 3 mindset. But I don't think those would be probably the kinds of programs that might get supported that way. But I think the planning has to start, as Mark said, during the budget cycle. And I think that's when we start. And those budget cycles are tough. And I remember the board laboring over those decisions about what they could offer And by the way, not just the Weathersfield board, the Heartland board and the Windsor board, you know, so it was a tough spring trying to figure this out. So I appreciate that comment.
Ethan, did you say something? Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say thank you for your response. And I understand this year is unlike any other, but I think there are people who would want this just noted for the future moving forward.
I agree.
Okay, Ethan.
All right, last time I took my hand down instead of the mute on accident. So first I just want to say I'm really impressed and encouraged by how much progress happened between when we first had our meetings and now in terms of getting tips back and pause back. And I know we're still working on the school day. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. And that's really great that you guys have been open to revisiting it and listening to the teachers and the community members. And that's been awesome, the results we've had. Couple things that I'm noticing. One of them is there seems to be a lot of confusion as to whether there's plans for this being 1 year or multiple years, because I'm hearing a lot of talk from the administrative level, not Dave, but others that really they forecast out multiple years. And I know what Weathersfield, I think I'm hearing from every level at Weathersfield, administrators, school board, parents, is that this is not the model we want. So I hope that they pull back on that. The other thing is I really don't like hearing, and it happens over and over and over, that we had professionals do this and it's too late, you need to like blah, blah, when I think the only professional they had involved from Weathersfield was Jean Marie. And from the comments, I think it's pretty clear to read through that she was not in support of doing it this way. So it's really frustrating to be backed into saying, hey, we did this all a long time, you're too late, when you never had an opportunity. So I hope that they will continue to get input, because it's helped a lot recraft the plans that we have going forward for next year. The other piece I want to say real quickly is what we saw in the results for COVID nationwide, not just here, is that it didn't just hurt our most at-risk kids deeply, it hit everyone. And I think what we're hearing is that with this recovery plan, one of the biggest complaints I think Weathersfield has is that the decision was made to address the most in need of very few people with very expensive needs. And it doesn't sound like there was much attempt to try and address, or maybe there was, but it didn't get there, to try and address the much cheaper, bigger group as well. And because they all saw their numbers drop, maybe up, with this exceptions, but I looked through the data that we got, and that we all saw drops in a lot of ones, and the teachers, said they found it was because of lack of instruction time. So would have liked to see them to try to pick off. Sometimes it's great to do some of the cheap stuff and make a big difference, as well as tackling the really expensive stuff for a few people. And again, that they're supporting the community to have kids, their parents that are willing to pay, because they're paying for a lot more to put them in childcare and camps during the summer than it would be for them to fund your budget at Weathersfield if we had one that was a little more, reasonable. And for that population, you don't need as much of the state funding for the very intense stuff that you've already got a plan for.
Thank you, Ethan. I think that's what a lot of us have issue with, is that it's not addressing all of the kids that were. I mean, I was told that it would address that it would include all of the kids that had been attending Weathersfield's previous summer program, and it doesn't seem like that's the case.
Yeah, no, we hear you, and I'll tell you, recruiting staff was difficult because we wanted to keep those pods low, and I think that was part of the problem. We went out early to get staff. I think now, because we've got probably 140 maybe professional staff if you count everybody. And again, we've got 19 people committed, so that that did cut down on the ability to serve some of those kids we really wanted to serve. The other thing that happened was we were working with our partners, who were going to do the afternoon program, the recreation centers, the bridging the gap, and again, they couldn't find people to work in those programs. So and our teachers didn't want, and I don't blame them, they didn't, and support staff didn't want to work a whole day So it was a challenge. There's no question about it. We'll start earlier next year. I think the ESY conversation was going on, like Kay said, before this, and it'll continue to go on. And I think we will start early, and we'll keep boards informed about the way it's going. I think we'll analyze this summer's work, and I think we also have to do a better job, a better job during budget season of analyzing what we want to do for kids in the summers and after school. So we can do that.
Jackie, I think you had more to say. We sort of got off on a tangent, but maybe you had other things you wanted to talk about.
That's all right. We hit the high notes. I was really happy to see that an HCRS clinician is put on. That's fantastic. We needed that. The rest of it, I think, is Angie has my responses.
Okay. And Angie, the other question that came up earlier, because I certainly misspoke. I know we've talked about this over and over again, and that was the position that appears to still be in there, at least I was looking over Mark's shoulder, that supports the accounts, not accounts payable, but the purchasing agent in the business office. I know you and I have talked about that. So right now that's still in there, but we've talked about taking that out of there, right?
Yes, I have not been directed to take it out, so it is still in there.
Okay, all right. So we still have more to talk about with that. I don't think, quite frankly, that's going to get approved by the state. Angie and I have talked about that, so we can, you and I can look at that. I know we had some conversations about, whether or not we could transpose that with all the work you're doing with ESSER and underwrite some of that, but maybe some toward the purchasing agent, but we can talk more about that. It just came up again tonight, and I thought we had pulled it, but we haven't. So I appreciate that we've got the right number in there.
Go ahead, Mark.
I'd like to talk about the job description of the assistant recovery coordinator. That seems like I know it's a big job, but that seems to me to be an extraordinarily high number. It was said during past meetings that grant writing may or may not be a part of that job.
They said speak up just a little.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking for a clear description of the job description of the assistant recovery coordinator. It was said in the past that grant writing would be a part of this job. I want to see how big of a portion of this job that is, because in this case, it seems like an odd way to fund grant writing. Perhaps I don't have any experience with educational grant writing, but I know in terms of entertainment, there's normally a nominal fee to make sure that you're writing grants appropriately and that the organization can fulfill their end of the bargain. And then a lot of times it's done on a percentage basis, but for the grant writer. Like I said, I have no experience with it in education. It just seems like a very high baseline number to me, if that's what the position primarily is. So I was hoping somebody could address that.
Yeah, Angie, I don't know if you want to address that. I mean,
Sure, I do.
I don't think grant writing. Go ahead.
Okay, so that position, remember that whenever we put a salary or a stipend line in there, we have to include the benefits package. So that's not base salary, that's base salary plus benefits. And as you know, healthcare can be expensive. So any of the positions that we have in the grant reflect that benefits package. Again, that's a variable amount. So I'd just like you to provide a little glimpse of what I'm doing right now as your 0.5 curriculum director and 0.5 locally funded curriculum director, 0.4 grant funded curriculum director, and 0.1 grants manager. So 10% of my time has to be devoted to managing the consolidated federal programs grant. All the time that I've been spending on the ESSER grants cannot count toward that time. It also is time that I'm not doing curriculum director work The amount of time that I have spent just developing the ESSER 2 grant is, I probably have 2 weeks, full-time weeks in it right now. And so I have not figured out yet how to actually put grants management time in that grant. There is a way to do that in the CFP. Because these grants have been rolled out so quickly from our Agency of Education, we are unraveling and learning those things. They're still holding hourly information sessions every week for us to figure those things out. So I just want to say that when ESSER 3 comes along, which is almost twice the pot of money that we have in ESSER 2, our CFP grant is about $600,000. So and I manage that grant with 10% of my time, and then 40% as curriculum director. So any other time that I spend working with title employees, that can count as grants management. Any time that I spend doing equitable services, that means for our schools that receive our students in our supervisory union who have low income status, they have rights to part of the consolidated federal program money. So all that time I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was talking just about what it takes to manage just the consolidated federal program grant for $600,000.
Yeah, I think what Mark was talking about was.
So I was gonna get to the fact that the assistant recovery coordinator is so that I can do my job, because that assistant recovery coordinator is going to be. We have not even heard about what all the requirements are going to be in compliance with these. What do you call them, David? I can't remember. Assurances, right? This is federal money. We have to follow all the assurances, which is all the paperwork that is required to manage this grant.
So this is primarily, this position is primarily just to manage the ESSER.
The ESSER funds.
Yes.
Recovery.
Yes, and all the activities that are in our recovery plan to help manage those. The recovery coordinator right now, because that assistant is not on the job yet. And so I am doing that job in addition to my regular duties.
Okay.
A matter of fact, I don't even remember a lot of grant writing in that job description. And I think, I know we do have one, we could send that out, but there's a lot of it's data management, a lot of it's going to be ESSER coordination, but that person doesn't start till, like Angie said, till July 1. So, and there'll be, believe me, a lot of work. There's procurement we have to do. There's a whole lot of stuff, but we can send you the job description.
Did that clarify anything for anybody?
It's just, I mean, it seems, I wonder how many, it seems like a lot of money, I guess, over $100,000 in a salary too, right? Because benefits are like 25 or 20.
Well, she was saying that includes the benefits.
Yeah, it's
but
135.
it's still, I look at that too, and I go, that's.
Like,
It's a huge, I understand it's a huge undertaking. There's going to be tons of.
But it was the one position, quite frankly, that in the ESSER rollout, they wanted districts to have, because they want to have a single person to communicate with, right? And like Angie said, her job is curriculum coordination and all that work, but there's gonna have to be somebody that does all of that work. I know our surrounding districts, Woodstock, Hartford, they're all hiring, recovery coordinators and ESSER coordinators.
It's the assistant that's misleading.
I think you're right.
The job description.
And we did talk about that. Yeah, we did talk about that. It's probably a little bit more than an assistant. Yeah, right.
Sounds like
a good point.
Okay. Did anyone else have anything more they want to say about that on the board? I also feel like it's a lot of money to pay for that job, but I'm hoping that the person that we've hired will be worth it, because I'm sure if you don't file all this paperwork exactly right, you probably end up maybe losing money, and it could end up costing us more than the amount that's being spent for the salary of this person if you hired the wrong person and they dropped the ball somewhere. So I just really hope that we've hired the right person, and that this money is money well spent, not money misspent. Does anyone online have anything they want to add? Ethan?
I see Ethan's hand, too.
Can you get closer to your mic, Ethan?
Yeah, thank you. Is the line item budget going to be presented so that people can actually see what the spending is?
You mean the year one budget?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, these
We've
things
we've still seen nothing.
online.
I think you've already got that.
They were at the meeting.
I've provided the budget to the board members only. I've not presented it to the public.
Oh, I thought it was going to be on the website, Angie. Is that not going to happen?
We can do that.
It's not final yet.
Okay.
And so I mean, it's still moving parts. And I think when I actually put this submission in, that would be a more appropriate timing to share it.
No, absolutely not. At that point, there will be no opportunity for any input. And we've already seen how much progress we've made with just a little input. And we only had a couple of weeks where the community could get involved. And it's public funds, it's federal funds, right? And you actually can't hold it. We can do a freedom of information request, but it should have been out there to us, the stakeholders. There should have been a budget committee, just like with your other budgets, put together on this. And you guys didn't. In fact, the state guidelines talk to you about the stakeholders they're supposed to involve. And now we're going to hear, oh, it's too late. We already made these decisions. You should have said something sooner, when you guys are also pushing back. All you have to do is slap the word draft on it and get it out there to people so they can see it. Just like you do with, this is crazy that you're refusing to disclose this, and you want to wait until after you've submitted it so that there is no input. Completely improper.
The boards have it, Ethan. The school boards have it. They have the fiduciary responsibility. They've got it. That's why we're talking about it tonight.
That's a good point. So would one of the school board members then just give it to Jean Marie so she can email it on the water cooler so that everybody has it? Because you do have a fiduciary responsibility to the people you represent. He's right. And this is being hidden from us, and you guys have access to it.
There's nothing
you didn't before.
It wasn't hidden. I mean, if you attended the last SU meeting, it was all up there on the screen.
No, I did attend the SU meeting. They did a slideshow, but they didn't give us any line item budgets at all. It was just a slideshow that had totally generic stuff, and you couldn't see anything from that slideshow.
Oh, I guess you are correct. I mean, I had it, so I assumed that it was on the screen. But
Well, Ethan, where I'll disagree with you is I don't think an ESSER budget is put together by a public budget committee. A stakeholder group, which will be for ESSER 2 and 3, because it's in the guidelines, will happen. But a stakeholder group and a budget committee are two different things. And this recovery effort is so technical regarding educational need, data, that we've got the professionals working on it, sharing it with our school boards and having these kinds of conversations. And I think once we get it into a more final form, and by the way, it won't be this week, tomorrow, again, a lot of the things that came up at the last Weathersfield board meeting, and I know, people would like to take credit for that. We were already in the process of talking about a lot of that stuff. We said this is a fluid document. So, I mean, again, I know you don't trust the administrators, but I do, and I trust our board members, and I think we'll have the answers for them that they ask. And then when, as we get this into a final form, right now it's got scribbly notes all over it. It's got some, things next to it that are even confidential. It's not the right document to deliver right now, but it will be soon, very soon.
Just redact. If there is something confidential, though I still think that's not true, but if there was something confidential in it, if it had some IEP person's name on it, redact that. Can't imagine that it would or why it would, but get it out to the people. I know that that's a public document. Those are public funds, and you guys have an obligation to, it's a public meeting, it's public funds. It's been requested multiple times by the school board, by us, and you waited forever to give the school board. The fact that it's in progress is not a defense to why you're not letting anybody else have access to it or provide input.
okay, Ethan,
That has nothing to do with anything.
I'm gonna have to cut you off here. I will look into it personally, see what can be sent out to the public as far as the budget, the ESSER budget goes. If it's not able to be published, maybe you and I can schedule a time to meet and we can look it over. The boards have been given it. We're doing our best to make sure that the money is spent correctly. You've heard us here tonight calling David on several things, and we still have some other stuff to call him on, and we're doing the best we can. Okay, so we'll talk about it later. Thank you. Let's see, what are we up now?
Summer Academy was part of that.
The Summer
right?
Academy we already sort of went on. So we will, is there anyone else in the public that has hands up or comments? Otherwise, we'll move on to consolidation concerns.
I don't know what that means.
The one thing that Ethan emailed to the school board was a email from you to, I think it was what's the fellow that's at Christian Craig. It was an email from you to Christian Craig, and it mentioned about it just mentioned how we'd like to do more things with combining the schools for the band, like how we did that one band concert 2 years ago. It was nothing to do, I just want to clarify that because I was in on meetings talking about that. It had nothing to do with consolidating the band or orchestra or chorus programs at the schools. It was just giving the kids the opportunity to do an occasional concert where they could be in a larger group setting, and an orchestra sounds better when you've got 50 kids as opposed to 20 or 60 kids as opposed to 20. It was like the equivalent of the districts kind of thing in sports,
which we've done in the past.
Which we have done in the past,
and it was a big success.
Yes, I mean we all loved it. My son participated in it. It was great, and we were all very supportive of doing more of that type of thing, and that's what David was referring to. It had nothing at all to do with combining the band and orchestra things. If there are any other consolidation concerns that anyone has, you can raise your hand. Okay, go ahead, Ethan.
So if it is the case, and Mr. Baker, we've had this conversation one time, you had it with Christian as well, and I know it wasn't just that. There was talks about math, foreign language, chorus, and band. If it's everyone's position here that we are not going to try to take 7th and 8th graders from Wethersfield and bus them over to Windsor for half a day, if that is totally combined foreign language and any of these things,
you're being
I'm fully in support. I've got no objections.
You're cutting out, Ethan, but I know what you're talking about. Now, as far as math goes, we do combine with Windsor for our Algebra 1 program. That was something that the board decided benefited our students.
They can get a high school credit. That's the difference.
Yeah, they can get a high school credit. We felt like that was a great benefit for our students, and we decided that it was worth pursuing that, and we agreed to it.
Understood it, but there were other things that were added on, and what I'd love to hear, and then I will stay out of the way on it, is if there's not a plan to try and consolidate our foreign languages, our band programs, we're going to keep our local bands, whether you do something on top of it, great. I have no problem with doing something on top of it, as long as you're keeping local chorus, band, foreign languages, and we're not moving to, trying to bus kids.
We don't currently have a foreign language program here at Wethersfield.
We do need to get that back, right, when we lost our Spanish. Yeah, so I'd love to see that back, but that was the concerns we had, and there was definitely talk, and if that is dead, that's awesome, but I'd like to hear the confirmation of that, because what I don't want to hear is, okay, I don't know what this is about, so I'd love to hear say, no, we're not doing that, I'll stay out of the way, but if that is where we're going, then I am going to try and continue to get involved, because that is totally against what Wethersfield wants. Also, the other thing I'd add is I hope that you will talk to the families who were involved in the algebra this year and see how that went, because I know it did not go well. So just check in with them, see how it went. Talk to some of the parents of the kids who were involved in that program, see what their experiences were, and take into evaluation whether it makes sense to do it again.
Okay, if anyone that was part of the Algebra 1 program wants to get in touch with me, please email my Windsor Southeast email address, which is Anne-Marie, all one word, ANNEMARIE .redmond, @wsesu.net. I would be very interested in how the Algebra 1 program went this year and any issues that anyone had.
Yeah. And by the way, we've heard some of that parent feedback, Ethan. We do listen, and we've made some changes with next year's program, including a new staff member to teach it. And it's also not a very good comparison because it was an online program.
Yeah.
You know, because of COVID this year, it wasn't an in-person program. We're going to go back to an in-person program next year with a different instructor. So, you know, we do try to listen to the parents, and this is a very important program. But back to your other guarantees, I don't have any plans as the superintendent to shut the band program down here at Weathersfield, or shut down the music program here at Weathersfield, or the art program here at Weathersfield. And I don't know where you've heard that, but that's not my plan. If we can build things on top of it to provide opportunity, we'll see where there may be gaps. You know, there's certainly no plan next year for foreign language, but if our schools can't maintain good foreign language programs, I'd love to do something in a partnering, but the boards will be well aware of that, just like they were with Algebra 1 as we move forward.
Mark?
Ethan, I hope I don't have to express to the community at large how near and dear to my heart all of the arts are. I don't think for a second that David has any intention of getting away with consolidating art or music of any kind here at this school, because he can plan on not having my silence should he think of it. As for the foreign language, that was cut regrettably due to budget concerns. We looked at it, we labored over it, we complained about it, but we decided that the budget was not going to pass, including that position. So as for those three aspects of concern, I don't think you have, I don't think you have worries, and not with me in the room.
And as far as even before we cut what we had of foreign language from the budget last year, it wasn't really a lot of foreign language, especially for the middle school students.
It wasn't.
It was a 0.4 position, and the middle school students, it was basically an exploratory class. It was not, they weren't getting Spanish 1 here at Weathersfield. Which would be an awesome thing for us to be able to offer. And if something were to come SU wide, I might be in favor of doing something like that. But that's just because there's no way that Weathersfield at this point is going to be able to afford to have it on our own. And if I can offer something to our students through the SU that we can't offer here, I think it's worth looking into. Now, if it's something that we can offer here, then I don't see any reason to have to pay the extra money to bus kids over to Windsor. But if it can't be done here and we are able to do something on the SU-wide level, I don't see any problem with that.
And I think along the lines of what Anne-Marie's talking about, I think when we first had the Algebra 1 discussion, there was some talk about, because I think it was at the same time we were talking about cutting the foreign language program. We're talking 2-3 years ago. I think it might have survived that year, and as a 0.4, I don't remember. But there was some talk administratively. I don't know if it ever got to the board level because it wasn't going to work. But if you were going to bus kids over for Algebra 1, could they stay for 2 blocks and also get a Spanish 1 credit? There was some talk about that, but it never materialized. It's not on the table for next year. But I think those are healthy conversations that we can have, because for me, and you and I have talked about this, Ethan, it's about opportunities for our kids at the middle level. That's all I'm trying to do, and I'm not trying to consolidate anybody or anything.
Ethan?
Yeah, thanks. So the budgets are tough, and Weathersfield has had really tough budget situations for the last few years. and I remind people when that started, was the consolidation of our special ed that drove our budget up 10%, and we've never come back down. And you're seeing that like with the summer school program. And what I suggest to you guys is what other districts do. For example, if you look at Springfield and their tech center, different setup with their SU, but they actually, you can set it up so you vote on the SU board, and every town votes on the SU budget. Right now, it's the voters don't vote on the SU budget, so the only thing they can vote up or down is the local school budget. And I know in Wethersfield, they would much rather see you cut one of those $110,000 positions at central office and fund, for example, your Spanish program, than they would. But right now, it's isolated, and it's isolated in a lot of ways. One, when they control the information and give it late to the SU board, who then trickles back to the school board, it's usually already set before you guys have a chance to have input. That's not how it's supposed to work. That's how it has been working, but it's not how it's supposed to work. And in fact, they should be community levels. Your school board starts with what do we want from our SU, what do we need, whatever. Then they make their pitch, and their 3 representatives go and take that to the SU board. So as you get squeezed, I'm going to encourage you more and more, look at your SU budget, see if there's more fat in your SU budget than there is in your district budget, in your own building budget. Because I'm going to tell you there is, and that tends to be administrative staff and not your teachers. And look at these programs where you guys are right on it, and I appreciate your pushing on it, where you have like unnecessary busing for things, and you're not getting increased numbers to be able to participate. Keep looking for those things, because I know in the SU budget there are more things that you can find that, and you can get back your Spanish program, whatever. But if you don't find a way to have input on your SU budget, and if you can't get the voters to be able to have that say in it, the only recourse they have is to go after your local budget. And you don't want that, and nobody wants that. And you can get in those trends. So I really encourage you to get more of a handle on the SU budget, including letting the voters vote on the SU budget. And then all of a sudden there'll be a lot more transparency, and they'll make tougher decisions there, and more money will be available for the local schools to put it into their teachers.
Thank you, Ethan. That is something that I have been thinking about, and trying to figure out if there is a way to go about having that happen.
Well, at the SU meeting, I was actually voted in to be on the budget committee for the SU, so hopefully that will help.
Yeah, Jamie's going to be having our back on the budget committee, and she's a accounting wizard, so we're counting on her to let us know what's going on, because I'm not always so good with numbers, but that Jamie is, so that's good. But yeah, we've definitely found out through this process that we need to keep a tighter eye on what's going on at the SU level, and we will be doing that going forward. Does anyone else have their hand up? Anybody else here need anything? Okay, the next item for discussion is scheduling and restrictions. And from what I've heard from several staff members is that the scheduling people are feeling better about the scheduling situation.
Yeah, I think as the restrictions lessened and we were making some real progress with those COVID restrictions, and we were getting feedback from staff, again, not just from Wethersfield, but from across the SU. We were able to make some decisions, and those decisions we've already talked about tonight, in terms of adding a little bit of time to the end of the day. That'll give kids a chance to get back and maybe check in with their advisories, not so much in the self-contained classrooms. But also, we made a commitment as an administrative team that we're going to work on a system that's going to allow for the supervision of kids because a lot of the after-school programs happen after the kids will be dismissed. So for those kids who may need some of those, and again, we talked that sometimes those programs fill up, but we can certainly take care of that slot between 2:15 and 3:15. So I think we've made some progress. The union presidents have been very involved. I see Laura Powers on tonight. I mean, I'm certainly not going to put her on the spot, but I think everybody has a schedule now that I think will work. I know Jean Marie has looked at it with her staff. She won't be necessarily the one to administer it, but I think the understanding is that that it it's going to be a lot less restrictive, and I think it's going to work. That's my thought.
I see a hand up. Chelsea Chase.
Is drop off still 7:50?
Correct.
And the school day ends at 2:15, correct?
Well, between 2:15 and 2:25, right?
Okay. And how long are we?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chelsea.
How long are we locked into that?
Well, I think that's pretty much back to, for most of our schools, back to as close to normal as we can get. Are you talking about the earlier drop-offs, or are you talking
Yes.
about?
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about the earlier drop-offs. So some students after school in my family childcare that I run as a preschool. And I'm hearing from a lot of parents that the later drop-off is really going to be an issue and has obviously been an issue this year, but with employers now, having their staff going back to work more normally now, more and more kids are going to be going to, in our town, in Wethersfield, mostly unregulated places earlier in the morning to then get on the bus, go to school, and then have to go somewhere else after school. And really, continuity of care is important. And I feel like our kids are losing out with this later drop-off time. And parents are losing out, losing work time as well. And I think that we just really need to be thoughtful about that moving forward.
Yeah. Well, Chelsea, I appreciate that. And this is not the only school that's wrestling with this. We were wrestling with it before COVID. After COVID, we were finding those unstructured times in the schools with drop-off, sometimes as early as 7 a.m. It just wasn't working. And we found much, at least from what teachers, the feedback we got from teachers, much less, anxiety in kids starting the day when they didn't have these large unstructured times and, not always well supervised, which become, with those drop-offs, as you know, Chelsea, they are to some degree childcare issues. So I think what the principals have talked to me about is, again, working with our childcare providers, trying to figure, I know a lot of our buses do stop by some of the childcare centers. I don't know that it's door to door. My wife ran a center for a long time, and a lot of those kids were dropped off at the childcare centers at 7 a.m. The buses picked them up at 7:30 or 7:40, got them to the school on time. It's an issue. I won't tell you it's not, and we're going to keep working on it. But I think at least for next year, as we work on it, I think we have to count on a, and we wanted to let parents know earlier, a 7:50 drop off.
I was curious as to whether or not there might be some outside agency that could come in
Well,
and
that's what
use the
we're
school
talking
in the
about.
morning.
Yeah.
Because when the school that we came from in Pennsylvania, the YMCA did the before and after school programs,
Yep.
and they utilized the cafeteria all-purpose room.
Yep.
That's how we do calls.
So
That's how you calls. Well, what we've had here in the past was we paid Kathy Dana for 30 minutes of our contract to open those doors at 7. Because when I came here 11 years ago, those doors were locked till kids till 7:30. And I would not have it. So we put somebody in that cafeteria. Now, beyond just putting someone in that cafeteria, we then offered a walking program. We started breakfast at 7:15, God bless Craig. And we hired artists in residence, remember, Wacky Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So I did the grant writing for that. So there were many things provided between 7 and when we started our day at 10. But he's right, the administrative team said no to that we weren't a babysitting service. So this year I did try to get Kathy's contract to start at 7. The answer was no, because we try to do things uniformly. So getting somebody to come in, you know, we could have provided that for 30 minutes. It's probably, I don't know, $10 a day, but it didn't fly.
No.
What was the reason for that? Like, if it had been working for 11 years?
Well, because the support staff that Gina is talking about that would have been doing that supervision are paid instructional support staff. They're not paid childcare staff. And so we decided as an administrative staff that if we were going to unify the day and we were going to get, you know, our instructional support staff, they weren't going to be doing the kind of work. Now, if Weathersfield wanted to budget to do something in addition to that time, they certainly could do that.
That's
But
a town issue.
That's a
Not
town issue, or it could be a local school district issue, but it wasn't going to happen, because now remember, we have support staff contract is essentially one contract. The teacher contract is essentially one contract. So you just have to be careful about when you're starting somebody at 7 and somebody else at 7:30. You know, you just have to watch that stuff. But to be honest, what I would say to Chelsea is, we're working on it. You know, your new principal hasn't arrived yet, Brian. You know, Jean had a solution for it. You know, I'll certainly work with Brian and all the other principals to try to figure out something. We understand that a later drop off can be a problem, but whatever we decide, we have to make sure that it's sustainable, you know, affordable, and can, you know, and can answer the needs that we're looking for, basically.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, because there's so many wonderful people out there that in our local area, that's exactly what Hicks Nichols is for. So if you have a talent, and or it's to help for 3 years straight, you could write a grant, and the form is pretty simple to fill out, and you can come in and be that person that supplies, you know, whether it's like an art program or yoga, walking, whatever it is. Go ahead and fill out the form and send it in for Hicks Nichols twice a year. They go through it. It's a great committee. Chances are it'll get approved, and then we've solved our problem.
And it's a great return.
It's a great return.
You're not paying people with master's degrees to do childcare first thing in the morning, and you're extending services by, I mean, if you could contract somebody in to do that, it's a very small fee, and we're extending it 50 minutes as far as access to the building, to the community. It sounds like a great use of.
Supported that.
I was a member of Hicks Nichols for 13 years, and I can attest to we never get enough grants. Please write grants that benefit kids.
And it takes about 10 minutes to write that grant. I know, I wrote many.
And and the general rule is that if there's a grant that you write and it's refused, there's a reason for it, and we'll give you the reason, or I shouldn't say we, because I'm not on the committee anymore, but the committee will give you that reason, and you can adjust it and figure out what you need to change in order to apply the next for the next grant writing, the next grant session.
I just want to say something historically is I used to help Mario do the cafeteria in the morning. He was in there because he didn't have any other staff to go in there, so he was in there by himself. It wasn't the great programs you guys did. We just tried to keep them like.
How many kids did you get between 7 and
I don't know if everybody could hear what Becky
It was
said.
more like I think maybe it was like a little later. I don't think we had them quite that long, but it was pretty long. So I volunteered as a parent to go in there with him. So that's another option. Parents could rotate in there.
Yeah, I don't think people hear that.
You do want more than one person though.
Yeah.
So you can repeat it. So
Yeah, I'll repeat what Becky was saying. Prior to Jean Marie, Mario Babaku, he would run, well, not really run a program, but he would be available in the all-purpose room for about a half hour before school started for the kids to sort of trickle in. And Becky volunteered as a parent to help him out with that. And that's another option if we could get a couple of parent volunteers to rotate and offer that early drop-off time. That's another thing.
Is it an option? Like, would it be an option though? Or does it go through?
Well, this year it
Just
wasn't an
wondering.
option because of the public.
Right.
But
I'm
it
just
would-
wondering, like,
Yeah,
does that
no,
go
that
through?
could, yeah, that could easily be an option. And like I said, all of the principals are talking about this and having these same conversations. The boards are too, right? But what they've decided is we can't use instructional personnel to do that work. We wanted that to be consistent, but we could offer volunteer programs, community service programs, our childcare agent. I know I did check in because somebody suggested this. I don't remember who. It might have been either Nate or Ethan. I checked in with Springfield because they have what's called the All for One program. That's a private childcare facility that does that work, and they do the morning care in one or two of their buildings, and then the buses pick up and bring those kids. That's one of the stops along the route. But again, that's a bit of a private agency.
Which that's like similar to pause, right, where parents pay.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
But she's a teacher, right? Jen's a teacher
Well,
or a parent.
But it's after hours.
Right, she's a
But so
behavioral
is it-
interventionist, and
So
that
she's
is
being
after
paid
hours.
separately for that time.
Chelsea had a question.
Chelsea?
No, she wrote it in the
Oh,
chat.
she wrote it? Okay.
I was just asking, why can't we use instructional support staff for before school anymore? I'm not really clear on that. I just keep hearing that mentioned over and over as we've decided as an administration to across the board not allow that. I'm not really clear on why that is, since it's been happening in Wethersfield, I think, for at least 11 years now.
It started 11 years ago, because I started it. It absolutely has been 11 years.
I mean, couldn't that be, isn't that a service that could be negotiated separate from the contract?
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything barring those individuals from performing that service. It's just not negotiated.
We would
on the
pay them
SU
separately
level.
for their time.
Yeah.
Like a stipend or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Isn't that what happened before?
I don't know if it was stipend. I think it was part of their regular hours.
No,
Oh.
some people are 7 hours, some 7.5, some 8. So in that particular situation, for example, Meg Shambo was 8 hours, so I could have her go in. That was part of her teaching duties. And for Kathy Dana, we did give her 30 minutes so that she was here at 7 every morning. And on the rare occasion she couldn't come or whatever, BJ stepped in. And I will say that in the afternoon, what's quizzical is we're talking about this very thing for the afternoon. If school ends at 2:15 and support staff are paid till 3:15,
What happens?
they'll be supervising students, but not instructionally. Well, maybe instructionally.
But our
if
plan
they-
is to have that be
We'll
instructional,
have tips or something.
right?
Oh.
Yeah, more homework help, tutoring, more programmatic,
Pause
essentially.
will start at quarter.
And pause will start at quarter of, which is after school hours.
I think parents are struggling, just like, for instance, I have to get to Springfield. I guess I could throw my kids on the bus, but they never been on the bus or what, that kind of thing. So it's like 7:30 would be great to get to either Claremont or Lebanon or Springfield where people work. You know what I mean? I think that's what I've heard.
I did raise that issue. I'm not going to tell you I didn't. I've raised it a couple of times. I think the administrative team at this point is really sticking with 7:50 to 3:50.
And anything outside of those instructional hours, as Mark said, you could do through stipend, you could do through contracting with, a childcare agency, or you could, but we just
And it
want.
doesn't have to hold up the master agreement.
And it doesn't have to hold up the master agreement, exactly, because it's outside of those hours. So that's, that much like we pay pause outside of those hours, right? I mean, because some of those people have been teachers, they've been support staff, right? So I think that's just what we do during the instructional day, the 7-hour workday, the 7.5-hour workday, or for both teachers and for support staff. But I don't think it's insurmountable. And I think, Chelsea, we realize that's an issue. And I think it's one of the first things we'll talk to Brian about and just see what, again, a stipend means you've got to have some money in the local budget to do it, right? I mean, but we can take a look at that and see.
Chelsea, did that answer your question?
I think Meredith Kelly has.
Yeah, I guess my follow-up question is just, how can I help? How can we in the community as parents help so that this can happen and people can get to work and kids aren't getting themselves off to school alone and having, unstructured time that the school isn't seeing but is happening.
or are being crowded into unregulated programs that I hear parents, send their kids to and have guilt about and don't want to be doing it. So how can we help?
Help beat the bushes for applicants for the grants.
Well,
Get
get your background check done and your fingerprinting and become a volunteer of the school.
Which didn't happen this year because of COVID.
But
Yeah, we're hoping next year to be able to have volunteers in the school, which will be much different than what we
But
had.
Chelsea,
to
I
have
think
this
if there were a
past
group of parents that wanted to tackle this, I mean, I think that, you could send your name to BJ. BJ could collect the list, and when Brian gets here, we could, yeah, the BJ's looking at me like, oh, send me the names? No, but, just so we don't lose the momentum, if there are people that really want to try to solve this, right? I mean, I know that's what's going on. I know, I see Christine Bourne, the principal at Heartland. She's been talking to her rec center about some things, and I know you don't have a rec center. I get that, but, these meetings are going on now. I think the difference here is that it's hard because, Jean Marie's leaving, Brian's arriving, and we need to make sure that whatever we agree on, Brian can be supportive. You heard Becky say that, I don't know if you could hear what she said, but, Mario Babaku, he used to do the duty all by himself because he couldn't find anybody else to do it.
I think he might have been under the same thing as her, the contract thing.
Yeah, that might have been a contract issue
for
him, but my point is, I think it's solvable, but I think it's gonna be the community, that comes together to try to solve it. And I think that we can collect a group of names, a list of names of, just let us know.
Yeah, anyone that's interested in helping with this, if you want to either email me or call BJ, right? We'll get together a list of who's interested in helping, and at our board retreat next month, we can talk about the options. Maybe.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you before the.
Yeah.
Well, can't we just set up a Google Sheet that's a shared document, right, for sign up?
Okay.
To start to.
For an
that
interest
way
for a before
nobody has to
school
put it
committee
in.
or.
If
Yeah.
there's.
BJ's reluctantly writing it
That's
down.
supposed to save
Saying,
you
why did I
the
come
time,
tonight?
so that people can enter in their own.
So I will post
information.
that on Facebook, and Maria will send that out on water cooler.
Sure.
It's not an
I
unfair
think we'll solve this
request,
problem.
Chelsea. It makes sense. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I know some people don't feel comfortable putting kids on buses. I get that. That's a personal choice. Some people don't feel comfortable sending kids to a childcare in the morning to spend their first half hour of the day there. So if there's
Or
other
just
options, then we need to look
Can't
at that.
afford it. I
Or you can't afford
because
it,
they'll
right.
charge you
Right.
for a half a day or a full
Yeah.
day. I
Right.
mean, or they just
You
don't
have
have the
to-
space.
You have to buy a slot. Yeah. I mean, I get that. So it sounds like and believe me, it's not just here. So it would be good to get together. I think Brian, right, it's a community issue. I think
However-
Brian, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, however, we had it solved, but Windsor and Heartland have rec programs, so they can lean on them.
It's a different
And our
solution than what we
town-
have to do.
Right.
Yeah.
But we're in a unified contract, so we have to follow.
Well, they're certainly not using instructional support staff.
This is when we were talking about, as far as altering the time, and everybody was saying you can't alter the time. I was saying that you could alter the time, just not through the union and through the contract and through the administration, but we could alter the time in the building itself.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Okay, I see that Meredith Kelly has her hand up.
Yes, I was just going to ask, so it seems like there's some momentum here, and who can make the decision? Can the board just say, we want this and go for it, and here's the committee, or does it have to go through administration? I just wanted to try to help push this along a little as far as the decision.
No,
And I can't wait to be a volunteer. Sign me up, BJ. I'm there knocking on the door as soon as I can.
Put her on the list, BJ. Meredith is good on committees too, I know that, but I think it doesn't take any, I think you should have your principal involved in the conversation, but I think you could start the conversation,
What
without
I'm
him.
thinking is that at our next meeting of the board is our board retreat, and we're going to be getting together with the new principal, and the board will discuss this with him. We'll have a list, hopefully, of interested parent volunteers. But also, I don't want to set aside what Jackie was saying about maybe somebody doing something using the Hicks-Nichols Fund and setting up a before school program or something like that as well. So I think that's something we definitely want to talk about at our next meeting, and I think it's something we definitely can solve. I don't see this as, I've already heard quite a few volunteers, and yeah, I think it's something that we'll be able to solve.
Yeah.
Just a quick point, $20 an hour is the average rate of pay for a paraeducator to do this position. 175 days, that's only $3,500.
And even if we want to.
That's for an hour.
That's for an hour. You don't need an hour.
You don't, but it's good, but 7 to 7:50 is almost an hour.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, you don't want to bill less than an hour.
Right.
Well, that's true.
Right.
We're only paying you for 45 minutes.
So I mean, if you guys look at that,
No, we're on Litchfield taxpayers.
and that could be a stipend position.
But I heard, yeah, that could be a stipend position. And I heard 7 tossed around. I heard 7:15. I mean, I think that's why this committee needs to get a sense of what,
Yeah.
What works. Yeah. I mean, I think it's
I think the first step is to see what parents are interested in volunteering. We'll talk to Brian about, the solutions that we've come up with, see if he has any ideas, and definitely if anybody wants to go for a Hicks Nichols grant, I think that would be an awesome idea as well. So
Just ask BJ, she can send them out.
contact BJ if you're interested in doing a Hicks Nichols grant. Yes,
Earlier in my
Jim?
presentation, I mentioned the community school grant, and perhaps it would be worthwhile for Weathersfield to apply. This is the kind of activity that it revolves around. It's a small part of it, but it might be a starting point to really get the community more involved. And that's, if you want to read the bill, it's H106.
I don't really want to read the bill.
Jamie, are there certain restrictions that we have to abide by? Like we have to have so many, like a parent per so many students, or?
I believe there has to be 2 adults always with
Yeah,
students.
well, I think what you'd want to do, that's why maybe it would be a good place to start might be with the director of the pause programs that you've just hired. I mean, there may be a way to organize something much like we're doing after school, before school, because it helps to be a little bit of a licensed program, because then you've got some, staffing ratios, you've got insurance possibilities, so, but I think that might be a good place to begin. I know.
She might have to ride the bus in the morning as part of her duty.
Yeah.
She does now.
Yeah, but maybe
She
not,
might not
but you're right, but maybe. But the other possibility too, because that's what All for One does in Springfield. They do both the morning and the afternoon. But again, they're a private group that does this, and I think they're licensed. And it sounds, from the person that I spoke to, it sounds like it works pretty slick.
Can you do with funding for that program?
For that program, well, that's the other thing too. I think for that program, some of it is subsidized because they're a licensed program, they can get some subsidy. But I think there are also, and I saw somebody type into the chat, that sometimes parents are willing to pay for that kind of support in the morning and the afternoon. And that's okay too, as long as the one thing about a school program is, once it's a school program, and I'm not saying anybody's saying that, you really can't pay for that, right? I mean, once you've got the public, but you can for a stipend program or a pause program. Matter of fact, I think some of our parents paid for the pause program, right, after school. So you can do the same thing before school.
Yeah, the difference between All for One, because I used to pick a lot of kids up there.
Speak up a little bit.
Oh, the difference between All for One is they have various rooms, because it's in a wing of the middle school.
Yeah.
So they have kids in different rooms. So, and then they have a summer program too.
Yeah, they also have a summer
But the
program.
summer program is a lot of young people, just like Windsor. Like there's a lot of youth helping to run the summer program, which is what you get in a lot of summer programs. But so ours would have to be a little different. But to me, it sounds like we sort of want that.
Yeah. Well, that's why eventually you want your principal involved, right? Because there are logistical issues, space issues, where are the kids going to be? What are the ratios?
I want their sign off anyway.
Right, exactly. You'd like that, right? Exactly.
We're hiring.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's tough. I know that Jean Marie will tell you, even with pause, is a pause discipline problem handled by the principal or handled by the pause employees, right? I mean, one of the things with after-school programs and summer programs, if they're not handled properly, they can be a big burnout for your principal or for your administrator, because everything kind of keeps coming back to them. I think one of the nice things about the All for One in Springfield is it's all self-contained. It's in different rooms. They've got it worked out. There are activities for the kids. I mean, it's
liability coverage.
Yeah, they probably have their own liability coverage. I mean, it's pretty slick. But I'm not saying we can't get there. And I think that Jackie's idea about, other grant funding or the Hicks Nichols, I mean, I think it's just getting a group of parents together, and if somebody wants to either take that lead initially, and then Brian's arriving this week. He really technically doesn't start till July 1, but knowing him, if something came up toward the end of this month and he could be involved, he would be, and I don't mind facilitating that. BJ doesn't mind facilitating. No, we can help with that once we get that list of people who want to do that. I heard Meredith say she wants to be signed up, but I know it's an issue, and it's not just here, Chelsea. It's coming up in all the other communities as well.
Could I just add, can we make sure to get that in some sort of form out to parents, this discussion, so that way anybody who's not on the board meeting tonight has an opportunity to volunteer. Just
Yeah, maybe I could put a little paragraph together.
There you go.
Any chance we can bundle
And
it
put it
with
to
sports?
yeah, with the registration form. Yeah, I don't know about that, but
and the vaccine record.
Yeah, and the vaccine record.
Okay, Ethan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks. So I think it's great, all the momentum we've had. One of the things I just want to remind people, Jean Marie has always supported having this. She got it going, and she's always supported. And we hear talk, oh, yeah, maybe Brian can work this stuff out. It's great we have all this momentum. We've heard this. It was the administrative team and the unified contract. So we know, though, that Weathersfield's administrator was fully in support of still having this and was very against losing this. So I just want to remind you, we are not getting a lot out of losing all of this control because we have no oversight of the supervisory union level. And all this has started, the reason we have problems with our start time and our finish time and being able to staff this for such a little amount of money is because the supervisory union decided to go with the union, a unified contract, right? That we're not getting a lot of gains out of this for Weathersfield. All losses. It's messing up things all across the board, and all we hear is administrative team decided, which doesn't mean Weathersfield's. It means against Weathersfield's input, we were told this is what we're doing. And what is changing is David Baker is seeing the importance and how upset people are, and he's changing his mind. He's opening up to it. But if he had said we are going to do this from the outset, we would have had it all along. So I'm so glad that people are coming together and finding ways to work around this. But we shouldn't have to keep doing this.
Okay. Who else do we have? We have Chelsea Chase.
Sorry, I put my comment into the chat, just cautioning against creating a new license program for the before school. I mean, I run a program, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of paperwork. It could create more issues for us, especially with, having to buy insurance, and, it could potentially create some problems. And I would just, as a parent, be leaning more towards exploring options to use the school, as a fundraise project or parent led, with the principal, something like that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Does anyone else on the board have anything else to say about scheduling or restrictions? Any more hands up? David, is it possible at the end of the meetings for me to get a printout of the chats?
I've never done that. Maybe we could just copy and paste.
No, it does come through.
I was gonna say it does come through.
It comes through
yeah.
with your recording.
With the recording.
Oh,
Yes.
recording?
Yeah.
It does?
I'm pretty sure it does.
It does.
I hope I spelled correctly.
Because I haven't had a chance this meeting to read the chat, and
No one, I'll copy and paste into a document just to be safe.
that'd be awesome. Thanks, David. Okay, so now we'll move on to items for action. The first thing up is permission for the parent-teacher organization to, I guess, begin planning the car show, contingent upon I guess, future COVID restrictions. And also to participate in a couple of online fundraisers. So can I have a motion on this?
Sure. I motion that we allow for the PTO to have their annual car show on October 2nd with a rain date of October 3rd. In addition, I'd like to hold 2 online fundraisers to assist with their depleting account balance.
I'll second.
Oh, okay.
It has been seconded.
All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. That passed unanimously. So go ahead, get on it, Wendy. Is she still at the meeting?
I don't know, let me check it out.
She is.
Yes, she is.
There you go. And we also need to approve David for the 2 new hires.
Yeah, we need to do the support staff member name.
Is Crystal Sorrell, and we're recommending her for a full-time regular ed paraprofessional position in the middle school starting in FY22, which will be for her probably the first day of in-service. It is money in the budget.
And you can do them together if you wanted to, or you could do them separate.
Oh, okay. Why don't we do?
Might be good to do it separate,
Okay.
yeah, because
I just have a question about, so she is replacing Callista, who was in the 6th grade.
She was this year in the 6th grade, did a remarkable job. She is degree, and so Katie Ahern recognized her worth and offered her an SCI position.
And now we're splitting those 2.
We are, but we still have an extraordinarily large 6th grade and 7th grade, and we have 22 in 8th grade.
And this para will float among the
Well, I
middle school,
put
or-
Kathy Dane in 8th grade because she knows the curriculum so well, and she works so well with Diana Stilson. So right now, and I think Brian should, I've made some notes to talk to Brian about this, have a folder ready. Right now, I would say that this person would best be served floating between both 6th and both 7ths.
The only thing that I was worried about was that we're hiring the 7th grade teacher with ESSER funds, and those will run out. That's it. I mean,
yeah,
so
well,
we'll
my
have to.
thing with the 7th grade teacher is that I don't think we're gonna need 5 7th grade teachers in 3 years from now. Like, because the way that the
middle school.
5 middle school, sorry. Yeah, I was like, 5 7th grade teachers. All of a sudden, have a huge school. But the way that the numbers, I look back at the numbers and the way that they work out, we sort of get through these kind of big bubble years.
But so does that, I mean.
Well, ESSER fund runs out, and then you have a decision, and that is to look at your matrix, to look at student-teacher ratio and that kind of thing. So let's say in 3 years you want to keep the teacher, but you didn't feel a need for the paraprofessional. That is covered in your master agreement. That's called riffing. And so you would just follow the master agreement timelines, and you can do that anytime with any support staff or teaching staff. And frankly, it's something I look at every year, and it's a numbers game.
Yeah, that's all I was just worried about.
Yeah.
But
Anyone else? Anyone want to make a motion?
to hire.
Together or separate?
We're gonna do
We're
these
doing
separate,
separate,
Ed,
David.
because the second motion will be a little different.
Crystal Sorrell. Sorrell, local.
I'll make a motion to hire. Oh, I'll make a motion to hire Crystal Sorrell for the
FY22 school year.
FY22 school year.
Any seconds?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That might be
Any
Jamie's first
opposed?
motion.
Yeah, no, I think it is.
Make sure you highlight that in the minutes. That was
See,
Jamie's first
I
motion.
couldn't have all the fun.
That's good.
Isn't there a balloon?
So the next person is,
Right.
the next person is Zach O'Brien, right? For the middle level position. And I think the way to word this motion, Becky's paying attention there, would be to authorize the superintendent to hire Zach O'Brien, pending formal AOE licensing requirements. He's in the process. I don't think it's gonna be any problem at all, but I'm gonna meet with him tomorrow, maybe right here, and we'll get to the bottom of it. Did you get that, Becky?
Authorized superintendent to hire
Hire
Zach
Zach O'Brien as a middle,
pending.
right, as a middle level teacher, you could put that in.
Should we put using ESSER funds or?
I don't think you need that, but, you know, if you want to put that,
Might be a
in,
good
good.
reminder.
I think we.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then pending AOE licensing approval. He's got most of his stuff done, so
Just so
I
we can
think he'll
remember
do
when we
fine.
look back.
Yeah.
Too.
And for those who didn't know, who signed on late, Zach O'Brien was recommended by the middle level interview team to be the fifth middle level teacher, and we're using ESSER funding for that. So.
And is that team a peer review? Is it the other members?
No, luckily it's not peer review. It'll be strictly through either the provisional process or he may just qualify based on his transcript. You know, I haven't looked
You
close.
were saying the team or the committee.
Oh, the team, right, the middle level team. Right, there was a whole team of teachers. I think BJ sat on that team that interviewed him. Or interviewed two candidates, right?
Yeah, two mid-level teachers, a parent, Meredith Kelly, a student, Gabby Crane, and myself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And they recommended to Jean and I that he be hired.
I'll make that motion because nobody
Oh,
can
okay.
Good. So
They were written
moved.
out. but
So
I'll make
moved,
that.
as we say.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously. So congratulations, Zach.
And Crystal.
And Crystal, yes.
And Crystal.
We look forward to
And
meeting
it'll-
both of
it'll
you and
continue.
Oh, yes, very. Don't do
getting to know you.
Yeah.
Any other items for action?
I think that's it. Somebody mentioned maybe a need for an executive session. So
Yes, I would like to call for an executive session. And then we need to set the next agenda. Our next meeting is our board retreat.
Yeah, have we set a date for that?
Who is in the executive session? Just the board?
The board, it'll be the board and David and BJ for the first half, for the first little bit of it, and then David's gonna go.
I'm gonna leave it
Then
if
David's gonna
anyone
go
needs
and we're
it.
gonna
Yeah.
talk with Jean Marie.
Gotcha.
Are you gonna keep BJ up for that one too, or no? Maybe, maybe not.
So you, does it matter?
Doesn't
I mean, it's
I
up
don't
to you.
know, I don't know why we're meeting, so I don't know. Maybe you should have her there.
Protection,
Give her
protection.
some work,
Um,
like she hasn't worked.
So have we
BJ
set a
is
date?
welcome if she'd like to come in my.
yeah, I was wondering what we actually need to talk about what we wanna do for our board retreat. I think I was supposed to plan something, but I didn't.
It's what, July 13? Right?
Yeah, now do we wanna just have it on our regular night, or do we wanna do like a little cookout on a weekend, or do we wanna do a cookout on our regular night, or I was thinking we could use like that new pavilion that they built out there.
Yeah,
if
that's
the
a
weather was
possibility
nice, and
outside.
have a little
Bring a grill
picnic.
or not.
Bummer Pelham.
My
Yeah,
July
public
weekend,
comment.
That was Hicks
I'm not
Nichols
available
money
on
too.
July weekends.
You're not available?
Yeah, I was
Okay,
gonna
so
say
we could do it during the week. We could just
Yeah.
do an evening one.
Just
The only-
because I've already planned for that night off. The Tuesday.
Okay, so we'll just stick with our regular night.
Well, July 12, 13, and 14 is the administrative retreat, so Brian won't be around and I won't be around.
Oh, well, we need to have,
So we just need to do something away from those 3 days.
what
we
days
do
did you
the
say?
sixth?
July
Ours would be
12,
13, yeah.
13, and 14.
Can we do the sixth?
6th could work.
No, I can't do the 7th.
Okay, is everyone free on the 6th? That's the day after 4th of July weekend.
The Monday.
It's the,
Oh,
well,
it's
it's
Tuesday.
Tuesday, actually.
Tuesday.
Monday's the holiday.
Monday's
Monday's
the
the
holiday.
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 Yeah, I know Brian and I can certainly be here. What we've done traditionally, when we do a retreat, is we start a little earlier. We do something around food. But, you know, so we can, I don't know what people's work schedules are, but if we could start
I could probably
around
start at
4 or
5.
4:30, 5, yeah.
Yeah, I could start at 5. Is everybody else good for 5 o'clock?
And usually it's a pretty informal meeting.
Yeah.
You talk about goals, some of the things we talked about tonight.
Yeah.
Good chance to get to know Brian a little bit.
Well, Mrs. Warren, are we on camera for this, for the
Uh,
retreat?
No, we're not
in
on
the
camera
past,
for
no,
the
we
retreat.
haven't
Someone
done
takes
that.
notes.
Yeah, usually
Okay.
we make Kristen take notes. Yeah.
Okay, all right, in triple.
She never argued.
I did it once.
You only
Wait,
did one?
You set precedent.
I guess I've only been to one. Maybe
So do you want to say the 6th? Have we settled on the 6th?
Yeah, I think so.
At 5.
Yes.
Okay. And yeah, it's a warned meeting, but
It is a one meeting, but it's not.
But
it's
no
not
one,
typically attended.
No.
no.
Well, in the past, it hasn't been only because sometimes it's really boring. It's just about, it's goals.
Well, no,
and-
last time I was
No,
the
we
one
might
that
get a
did
crowd.
like the first
They
meeting.
never know.
I see 11 hanging on. And
What,
it's-
what time are we starting?
5 o'clock on the 6th?
On the 6th, is there any way we can make it 5:30?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't know.
Or we
Or
can
can I
just, or
just
you can
log
just
on to
come
the-
at 5:30.
Can I log on to the Wi-Fi here? Are we having it here?
I think
Oh.
we can have it here outside like you
Sure, you
suggested.
can
Yeah,
hook
either
your
in or out,
Wi-Fi
depending on the
up.
weather, I guess.
Okay, that's fine.
Five,
You see a
and you
strange guy sitting around,
Yeah.
starting at
Oh, that's
3
what I
o'clock,
mean.
he's on an
Yeah, we're
anniversary.
gonna be picnicking and stuff, so
We're
we'll
gonna
just,
be
we'll start
eating
at 5
first.
and then you just
Yeah.
roll in when you get here. We're not gonna actually start the meeting probably till 6.
You're starting without me? So
Well,
fun.
you're gonna miss
Well,
some
we'll
of the
save
food.
you some food.
No, okay, that's good. Thank you.
And is it gonna be like potluck? Is that what we wanna do? Like everybody brings something? We can maybe do a Google Doc to figure out what everybody's bringing. Okay.
Sure.
You can bring dessert if you're coming late.
We're back at 5 p.m.
All right.
Yes.
Back at 5.
Bag of 5 and with a dish.
And if we're here, cocktails are
Still
out.
hanging on.
Oh my God, we're bringing the
Oh, that's right.
It's a wine night.
We have it outside though, they're not, right?
No, still.
Emery, I'm gonna head out.
Thanks, John.
Thanks,
Where's the
John.
important-
You know the one thing I didn't
I
mention?
didn't remember that.
It's what?
The money, the pension fund.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
that's scary. Thank God I'm retiring.
Yeah.
Oh, that's.
He
And then we
pulls
don't
the pin,
typically
drops
post an
it, walks
agenda
out.
for the board retreat, right?
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so
much.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank you,
hanging in
John.
there.
Just, no, it's
That
just, yeah.
pension fund is gonna be a bear.
Okay, so we don't need to come up with, do we need to set an agenda for the,
Retreat?
no, not for the
only
retreat,
one
but for the next meeting after that, or no? We can set the agenda
At the retreat.
at the retreat?
We could do that, but that's a good idea. We
Okay.
could
We
set
should
it at
also
the
take
retreat.
submissions
Things might
online
change before then.
from other people.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, because you'll have another meeting, you could have another meeting in July, right? And we could, if you wanted to, or early August, we could figure that out at the retreat.
Mhm.
Because that's early enough in July that if you wanted to have another one,
Mm-hmm.
you could.
We thought through, okay.
We
Um,
haven't had enough fun.
so then, I guess it's, does anyone want to make a motion to go into executive session?
I'll make the motion to go into executive session.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.